Good morning, everyone. The recess is ended, and the meeting will come back to order. We're going to start this morning with a brief invocation. If you would remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
If you choose to, please join me in prayer. Lord, we thank you and praise you for this day and for this great nation. Lord, we thank you for this county. Lord, please give us the wisdom to guide it properly. We pray for the safety of our employees. We pray for the safety of our public safety employees across the nation, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that are out across the world protecting America's interests. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah! All right, we are on item number 70. Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing for item number 70. We don't have anyone signed up to speak. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on item number 70? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that item 70 be adopted.
Thank you. You've heard that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
You've heard that motion. Second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You guys appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item number 71. I'm going to open the public hearing on item number 71. We have no one signed up to speak for item number 71. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on item number 71? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on item number 71. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
I move that item 71 be adopted.
Thank you. You've heard that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. You have it, so ordered. Item number 72 is a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing on item number 72. We have one person signed up to speak. Michael Neal.
Hello, Chairman Lincolnfelter and Supervisors. My name is Michael Neal. I'm here to speak in favor of this subdivision that's going in. I'm the owner of Surbat Water Company, and I also live in the area where the subdivision is going. Really nice subdivision, and I'd like to see it go through and just let you know that we are providing water for them. They'll have all the necessary utilities and infrastructure for a nice development. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on item number 72? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on item number 72.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve item 72.
Thank you. You've heard that motion.
Second.
For that motion and second, any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Item number 73 is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing on item number 73. Jennifer Christian.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Christian. I live in Golden Valley, Arizona. My comment about this would be, personally myself, when I have family in town, say holidays, I could have up to 4 motorhomes for only a 2-week period of time. And I would just like to make sure that there would be some kind of an exceptions for short periods of time for families like mine that have company that come stay. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle Keck.
Thank you, Supervisor Lingenfelter and board members. Danielle Keck, Golden Valley. In regards to item 73, I would like some additional clarification about the item and the zoning ordinance sections that were referenced in the backup documentation. I have read sections 8, 16, and 37K, where I found no mention of being able to only have one RV permit issued. I just want to know if I'm reading that correctly, or if the development services are trying to add that regulation in now just because they are having an increase in request. I would also like to bring up the new definition that they're trying to change, if I could get that on the camera. Right now, recreational vehicles, recreational vehicle part reads as any area or tract of land where 2 or more lots are rented or leased on a temporary basis to the owners of recreational vehicles used for travel or recreation purposes and providing facilities appropriate to the needs of the people living there. What they're trying to change it to, which I do not believe is an actual definition for a RV park. What they're trying to change it to is any parcel of land with 2 or more recreational vehicles being used for living or sleeping purposes. To me, that sounds more like freedom for families who are trying to maybe reduce cost, buy a big lot of land. And I just know that right now, many families are struggling with affordable housing. I do not believe that only allowing one RV on private property would be beneficial to our community. This ordinance would only create more hurdles for many to continue to keep a roof over their head. The current ordinance clearly states that RVs cannot be used for storage and must be kept roadworthy. I wonder why we don't focus our resources on following through with complaints from the residents about properties that are not following the current ordinances and just leave the rest trying to survive alone. I would also like to know if there are any properties in the past that have been issued more than one permit to allow for more than one RV on their property without being approved as an RV park, which is a very strenuous thing to do if you're trying to convert what you're currently living in to an RV park. I went through that ordinance as well. And I just have a suggestion. Maybe at the budget meeting starting this week, the board can look into how much money is being wasted on salaries and benefits in the Development Services Department, and how much time and money are being spent creating ordinances that are not designed to help the majority of the community, but only create more hardships for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip Robinson.
Morning, Neil. I'm here today to talk about it. I oppose it. I have 3 of them out at my place, and I use them for my family that comes from Arkansas here. You guys put this in effect, then I've got to get them out. And then what do they got to do? Go to a hotel, motel? That's not right, y'all. Come on. These guys are doing stuff, making more regulations to us, and it's getting old. It really is. They need to sit back. There are employees. They need to sit back and just do their job. Stop trying to make more regulations against us. Come on. It's getting ridiculous. If not, I guess we, the people, are going to have to start protesting every time we have a meeting, because it's getting ridiculous what this county is doing to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Reitmeyer. Mary Reitmeyer.
Good morning. I'm Mary K. Reitmeyer. I am from Golden Valley. I live in North Bowie Road, formerly a retired teacher from Washington State. We've been here almost 2 years, and I'd like to reiterate, and I agree with a lot of the previous statements. I feel like our fundamental right and what our country was established on, the freedoms, are being taken away, and so many families are looking for housing, and the sharing of infrastructure and resources and community, whether it is family or loved ones grouped together, would really be detrimental to our society. Thank you.
Thank you. Chuck DeShazer.
Hello, my name's Chuck DeShazer, 8778 Polaris Road, Topeka, Arizona. I'm here in opposition to
one particular part of item 73, and that's the number that they've now placed on there. I have several examples, one being I have neighbors that have been married 66 years now, I believe, and they have 3 RVs on their property legally. Development Services has been out there and looked at their RVs and done all the necessary paperwork. And if this were to go through, they would only be allowed 1 RV. The reason I bring this up is their marriage of 66 years is best suited by him having his RV and her having hers, and they come have lunch together and go their separate ways in the afternoon. You can only put up with somebody for so long, like us putting up with Development Services. The second example is I have a neighbor that has 640 acres, 1 square mile by 1 square mile, and you're telling him he can have 1 RV on that entire parcel according to what they're trying to put through. This seems to be new and exciting. And, you know, there's just, I got another neighbor that his mother comes down from Canada a certain time of the year and wants to stay for more than 14 days, and that would not allow, he has 5 acres to spread out on, and I hate to put it this way, but maybe he wants to be naked in his RV and she don't want to see it. So, you know, there's reasons for this. We need to just take and line item out that 1 RV. And I'd also like to bring up, I thought that the presentations were supposed to be before the call to the public, so we knew what we were actually talking about and what was going to be presented. Other than that, I'm finished, I guess, except for Mr. Gould didn't mention the new space cadet people in the presentation. Thank you.
Logan Marsh?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, board, Chairman Lingenfelter. I'm Logan Marsh, Golden Valley, Arizona, candidate for District 4. I kind of prepared a little bit about item 73. It concerns me. When I moved here to Mojave County, I came here in I'd say it was a luxury RV and another travel trailer because we had kids. It took me 2 years to build my house. Not because I wanted to wait 2 years, but because it was the housing boom, and to get a new manufactured home took about 1.5 years. There's a lot of people that are moving here, probably in the same situation that I was. I believe this is severe overreach by Development Services. There's plenty of people out in District 4 and many other districts that have multiple RVs to fit their family's needs, and it might be because they're on a fixed income and they can't afford the established, stick-built mortar house at the moment. This severely limits their ability to do what they want on their land. And I really hope that the board reconsiders this proposition and maybe altering the way it's written to be more conforming to families that it will represent. I thank you for your time.
That was the last person we had signed up. Ms. Esposito, please.
Thank you, Chairman Lingenfelter. I would like to point out that any existing RVs should be grandfathered in, obviously. But I would like to direct your attention to Arizona Revised Statutes 11-251 Powers of Board. Nowhere has the state given the county the power to regulate private vehicles on private property. Now, the state definition and even the county code acknowledges that RVs, including park model trailers, are vehicles. So you don't have the statutory authority to even charge someone for a permit to park their private vehicle on their private property. Now, obviously, I came from Quartzsite, where these 90-something% of the town is essentially a giant RV park. So out of respect for my neighbors in the subdivision, I parked my RVs on my other property. And I'd be happy to get a few more, if you guys want to fight it out in court, but I don't want to go there, okay? Do the right thing. You don't even have the authority to tell people they can't store something in a vehicle on their property. You have no more authority to regulate how many knives or forks they have in a drawer than you do what they have in the glove box of their car. The problem that you have here is trying to decide whether someone is using it for a residential purpose or not. Now, this this United States Supreme Court, I believe it was, has ruled that even the police cannot enter a driveway if they see a suspected stolen vehicle without getting a warrant. So therefore, you would burden county enforcement employees with getting a warrant for every RV parked on every lot from Cane Beds to Donkey Acres. You would have to get a warrant to inspect, to determine whether or not anybody's RV, private vehicle parked in their private property, was being used for a use that's not permitted if it happens after you were to do this, where it wouldn't be grandfathered in. Then you'd have to determine whether or not that RV was grandfathered in. You have to stop staff from coming to you with these absurdities because you are tasked with telling them the policies you want them to do. And that's not happening. They're coming to you with these crazy ideas, which the community in the unincorporated areas does not support. That's why we keep showing up to protest these things. You're not asking for it. They're coming to you with these ideas. If you don't have the courage to get rid of the Agenda 2030 International Property Maintenance Code, which is basically HOA rules for the unincorporated areas, then at least stop entertaining these things and tell staff, listen, we set the rules. Stop coming to us with solutions to problems that we don't feel exist. But the bottom line is, you really don't have the authority to regulate private vehicles on private property. You would have to get a warrant to inspect them. It becomes a cumbersome problem for the courts and everything else. So you need to just put this in the round file where it belongs. Thank you very much.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Open it up to the board.
I'd like to hear from Tim Walsh.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board.
Good morning, Tim. Can I just ask a straight question? What was the impetus to this? What problem is this trying to solve?
So this issue, a lot of the comments today were based on overreach and causing new restrictions. This is not causing any new restrictions. Currently, you are only allowed to have one RV on a property. The impetus or really what initiated this was on AR zones, you can have an RV as a temporary, sorry, let me back up just a second. AR zones, pull it up. Sorry, getting ahead of myself on this one. Find the right number. So currently on an AR zone, you can get a permit to have an RV as a secondary residence. So you can come into the building, you have your house, you can come in, we'll give you a temporary permit for an RV as a secondary residence. For an RE zone, it required a special use permit. So if you were in an RE zone and you wanted to have an RV as a secondary residence, you had to go through the Planning and Zoning Commission and then come to the board to get a special use permit to place it there. So the start of this was basically to allow those RE zones to have an RV as a secondary residence, get that permit in the same way that you would for an AR zone. Now, currently, you can't have an RV as a secondary residence to an RV. So if you have a temporary use permit for an RV on your property, you cannot be issued an RV as a secondary use permit. So in a sense, by practice, you cannot have more than one RV on a property right now. So what these revisions did was basically clarify that, saying that if you have more than one RV on a residence, it becomes an RV park and you need to meet those standards. And the reason for that isn't because staff wants to control everything and make everybody's lives miserable. The reason for that is sanitary facilities. If you've got more than one RV, we need to start looking at the septic system, what's being used in order to facilitate those RVs. Do we have sufficient water and sewer available for those RVs? So we don't just have a bunch of these dumping out in the desert. But that's basically what we're trying to do. We're not imposing any new regulations. This is an existing regulation that's already in place. It's just clarified in the ordinance. And we're actually making it easier for somebody on an RE zone to get an RV permit as a secondary residence without having to go through the special use permit process.
Tim, I've got a couple questions for you. I think it's a good thing to remove the requirement to obtain a special use permit for an RV as an accessory residence in the RE zone. But like some of the speakers this morning, I think I have some reservations with some of the language. For instance, the any one parcel language that's in there right now. We have some really big parcels in AR and RE zones. And with regard to the disposal facilities, this issue actually comes up quite a lot in an area that we're going to be up on Friday in the Beaver Dam area. You got a lot of people up in that area that this would affect or impact. And most of the people that I talk to, you know, don't they dispose at facilities that are made for disposal?
They can. Generally, what we see is when these are being used as a temporary residence on a property, generally, well, our ordinance requires that they do have a facility on site, because a lot of times what we've seen in our code enforcement is without that place on site, you will see on-site dumping. And I know it's a fine line to balance. We had a member at a speaker at the call to the public at the first part of this meeting that mentioned a number of his properties around him out in Golden Valley had RVs on there illegally, and that they had a number of these illegal systems. And that is a number of cases that we're following up on, is they'll place these RVs on the properties without septic facilities, and you have on-site dumping. That is a number of cases that we do deal with, both with zoning and with environmental quality. So I understand definitely it's a fine line to balance between having your neighbor with 3 or 4 RVs and insufficient facilities, and being able to allow for these larger parcels where they want to have a couple of them on there.
I hear what you're saying, but I can't help but think that it's like everything else where you have, no matter what the regulations say, you're always going to have a very small percentage of people that don't follow the rules, and they're always going to dump in the desert, and there's nothing that we can do. I mean, how do we enforce that? I mean, it's complaint based, right? We go out, we inspect it.
Yep.
We give them maybe over a day to EQ, or when do they get involved?
Definitely, yeah. So we deal with it. So if we get a complaint, we go out and inspect, and if we can see that they are dumping on site, we issue an abatement order, both with environmental quality ourselves. We work through that and proceed, but at that point it's on the ground, and you know it's causing an issue for the neighbors, and so yeah, that's really the issue for limiting the number of them without it becoming an RV park.
Yeah, I think that it's just a very small percentage ruining it for everybody else. I think most of the people that own RVs are responsible. They go dump where they need to dump. If there's one hookup because we're not talking about super dense areas here. We're talking about agricultural residential. We're talking about recreational residential. What's the zone? The RE zone. And I don't think either one of those are really too densely populated. So I have just real heartburn with saying any one parcel. I think that, you know, at the very least, I know some of the people that I have spoken with up in the Beaver Dam area, when we'll be up there again on Friday, you know, they would like to have it, you know, because they do have family that comes, you know, 6 months out of the year, or they, I don't want to be any more stringent than we already are. I think that we need to open it up. I think we definitely need to get rid of the requirement for the special use permit. And I think we need to open it up to have, you know, maybe 2 or 3 on an AR or an RE parcel, especially if it's a few acres in size, you know, and I trust most people are going to be dumping responsibly. They're going to find a place to dump their waste in a responsible way. And there's nothing that this board can do that's going to help with the other small percentage of people. That's just my...
if I may, Chairman, so an AR would go down to 1 acre in size. So those can get down to an acre. And I believe, Scott, RE is at 20,000 square foot. So an RE can go down to a half acre. And in order to be permitted, so part of our temporary temporary permits for an RV, they do have to have the sanitary facilities on site in order for them to connect to. So I guess the question would just be whether or not that the existing system that they have or the system that they've got planned for that site is of capacity to be able to handle the 2 or 3 RVs. But that's something that we can work with.
If the system is capable of handling 2, I just think it'd be simpler to work with them in that instance. It's just mine. Supervisor Gould, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Walsh, if they're bringing an RV in as a secondary residence, so from what I'm hearing, it does not require its own septic tank?
It would, I believe so. So yes, if they're bringing in an RV as a secondary residence, it would need to be connected to the septic system there.
No, would it require its own septic system?
It wouldn't require its own as long as the system in place has the capacity to serve
Can we
it.
calculate that by the number of bedrooms still, not
I
fixture
believe so,
units?
yeah, yep.
So that would be an additional 1 bedroom or?
You know, ADEQ actually has in their requirements, they have a specific amount that you account for an RV. So the house is built, you know, basically the house is accounted for through the number of bedrooms and fixtures, but the RV, they have a set number in ADEQs for how much an RV produces a day.
Okay, so you'd have to, how many houses actually have additional capacity available? Not many, because the builder doesn't put in a 4-bedroom septic for a 3-bedroom house.
Yeah, I mean, typically what they'll do is they'll look at what a 3-bedroom is and make sure that they have sufficient for that. And usually there's a little bit of extra with it, but yeah, no, they're not typically designing for a 5-bedroom when they're
No,
putting in a
everything is value engineered.
Yep.
You know, unless it was the owner wanted a bigger septic tank for some reason.
That's correct.
So in my experience, they don't put bigger than what they need to get a permit.
That's correct.
What's the regulation currently on people, friends and relatives coming and staying in their RV on your property?
Generally, so to have an RV as a secondary residence, you would need the secondary residence permit in order to do that. Generally what we'll see is, again, we're complaint driven. So if somebody's coming in for the weekend, they're staying in their RV, if we don't get a complaint, we're not aware of it, so we wouldn't be out there. If we do get a complaint, we would notify them and go through our process, but generally it would be, you know, that process has some time to it, so generally they're here and gone before that process.
Is there a county ordinance that limits how long people can come for a visit to your property?
Mr. Chair, members of the board. Currently, we do allow for 14 consecutive days and 30 days out of the calendar year that you can come and visit on a property without requiring a permit for your RV.
So 14 days in a row or 30 days max, which is the same as on vacant land?
Correct.
Okay. And this ordinance that you propose would not change that?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
If I'm reading it right, it says under K2, if a recreational vehicle is occupied on a property that is not part of a recreational vehicle park or recreational vehicle subdivision for more than 14 consecutive days or more than 30 cumulative days during any calendar year, the recreational vehicle shall be connected to an approved wastewater disposal system, and a special permit is required by this section. Is that what you're citing? I just think it's a little onerous for people that live in the remote, these zones, especially the AR zones. I don't think there's any, I'll hold my tongue on that one. I think it's just a little too restrictive the way it is right now. I mean, I think it's a good thing to get rid of the requirement to obtain the special use permit. Just my I support that.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just to kind of further clarify a little bit, we really don't see a big issue on larger parcels. We haven't seen too many violations come in. Where we have seen some issues where multiple RVs are on the parcel or on the smaller ones, even the AR ones where they're having several RVs come and stay just because they want to have a group of people there for an extended period of time. We're dealing with several of those, and like Director Walsh mentioned, we have several of those coming to the board each meeting and complaining about those kind of activities. Another issue, especially in the Virgin Acres area up north, those parcels are AR zoned, so they do allow for the RV as a temporary use or as an accessory residence. Those ones were platted prior to our zoning, and they're essentially grandfathered or legal non-conforming, and they're only a 1/4 acre in size. So they're not that 1 acre. And that's where we get most of the complaints is the snowbirds are coming down. They're putting 2 RVs, 3 RVs on a 1/4 acre piece of property and have been creating some issues in that area. And that's not all throughout the county. But I guess what I was trying to say is that we don't really see an issue with RVs on larger parcels. We haven't run into that.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to listen to the root cause problems that you guys are trying to solve through a land use issue. And I just feel like rather than trying to tackle these maybe root causes or root things you're trying to tackle through a land use, there might be some different ways to tackle the same problems and get a better effect. I don't know. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Angus.
I make a motion that we deny.
Thank you. You've heard that motion.
Second.
For that motion, second, any additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion to deny, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
I appear to have it, do have it, so ordered.
Chairman, if I may, just would like to point out that a motion to deny on this one would keep the secondary residence and RE as a special use permit, so those will continue to come. Would the board like us to draft any changes to this language to address some of the comments that were made here today? Because ultimately, a motion to deny leaves things as they are, which prohibits more than 1 RV on any acre of land. So based on the comments today, we'd be happy to go back and revise this. I'd just like some direction from the board if that's what the board would like.
Sure, Tim, thanks. Well, I think the good thing that we lost today from the denial was that we were going to remove the requirement to obtain a special use permit for an RV as an accessory residence in the RE zone. I think that was a positive aspect of this.
So that didn't go through though. With the denial, that didn't change.
Yes, I'm saying that that's one of the things we lost. So maybe, at least for my own chair, that would be a good thing to bring back. And then maybe if the other supervisors have something as well. Supervisor Angus?
Yeah, if you can bring back some wording that would maybe be more acceptable and not as onerous to the people who live there, and maybe explain it a little better.
We'll work on it. Thank you.
Supervisor Gould, did you have any input?
Board, if you wanted to, you could reconsider your actions, go through, strike out all the language that you didn't want in there and leave the omission or the repeal of the special use permit in the RE zone also. But it might be cleaner to since we've already done it, to let them go back and draft something that only does that.
I think it might be cleaner just to do that.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to item number 74. Item number 74 is a public hearing. The clerk of the board for one of our supervisors that's attending remotely has requested me to read what the item is. Discussion and possible action, approve the adoption of BOS Ordinance 2023-07, an amendment to the Mojave County Zoning Ordinance, Section 42, to allow for additional smaller signs for commercial developments and to clarify vehicles and trailers as prohibited signs, Mojave County, Arizona. Commission recommended approval by unanimous vote. I'm going to open the public hearing. We don't have anybody signed up to speak on item number 74. Is there any in the audience that would wish to speak? Ms. Esposito, please come down.
Thank you, Chairman Lingenfelter. I have my issue with this is on the vehicles part of it, and also with the First Amendment issue, because in a previous campaign, a business owner actually allowed me to put a large campaign sign on the side of his tractor trailer. And I think that there's an issue with the free speech rights, especially with the upcoming campaigns. I think everybody has a right to put whatever sign they want to put during the limited amount of time that the law provides for political campaigns. The other issue that I have that came to mind immediately was the fact that there is a guy who drives a vehicle with an electric sign, and you can rent that sign and he will drive it around the Kingman area. So it appears that by prohibiting vehicles to be used for signs, that it would essentially put this guy, I don't know who he is, or she, maybe, we don't want to judge, but they put this person out of business. So it's not really about the size of the sign. I really have an issue with the free speech rights of people using their, their ability to put something that's already on their private property or their business property as a sign. And I just think that maybe you should dig into the legal issues about that, because should it come down to where it prohibits these mobile electronic signs, which are becoming more and more popular, you see them all over Las Vegas and things too. These things are becoming more popular. It seems to me it would intentionally, sort of by accident, prohibit an entire type of business, and that could be problematic from a legal point of view for the county and for the board. And I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Sir, you want to come up?
Board of Supervisors, Chair, thank you. I thought it was kind of important to speak on this. As Jennifer had brought up, I actually do business with that sign truck. And he's a great guy. I also, I live in Golden Valley. So, Great American Pizza. He's got all sorts of signage out on his shipping containers, which he uses for business purposes, as does the jerky guy coming down the 93. I think that this needs to go back and get reworded and be a little less restrictive. Thank you.
Mr. Robertson.
Morning again. I'm going to make it real brief. It is against the Constitution, First Amendment. Come on, guys, wake up. This is getting ridiculous. Again, the county employees work for us. You got to start doing what we say, period. Thank you.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Open it up to the board. Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The government cannot regulate political signs on private property. It's a First Amendment right. So they have nothing to say about it. Even to the safety of the structure is actually difficult for government to regulate. So it's in no way going to have an effect on political signage on private property. I'm not sure you can regulate vehicles anyway. I don't know that the state has given us the authority to regulate what's on a vehicle that's roadworthy and licensed. My signs have my trucks have signs on them. I'm not going to let you regulate those. But I think you're treading into a First Amendment challenge. Just in general, you don't have the authority to do this. If they were unroadworthy, you struck the unroadworthy portion out of there. You might have some authority over unroadworthy, but if it's roadworthy and if it's licensed, I don't think you have any ability to regulate it. Thank you.
Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. So again, what problem was this going to correct?
So, and Chairman, members of the board, I'll echo Supervisor Gould's statements that, yeah, we don't have the authority to regulate political signs or really the language on those signs at all with it anyway. What was the case? Gilbert versus Reed went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and basically they limited that to basically our jurisdiction ends basically time. We can't regulate based on time, place, or content. Okay, sorry, got that wrong. So we don't regulate based on content, it's based on time, location, or size. And really what this is what we've had in place for years. It has been, as you see in D there, in E, that no unregistered or unroadworthy vehicle or trailer shall be parked or located on private or public property so as to be visible from a public right-of-way for the basic purpose of signage. And then it also talks that this is not intended, this does not regulate your company trucks with the logos on them, or, you know, the U-Hauls or anything like that. Basically what this is when a vehicle is parked on a property and used as sign, it basically got rid of the unregistered, because you'll see it we used to see quite a bit of it. You'll see on the way either along I-40 or along 93, they'll park these old dilapidated trailers out there with a big sign on it, and eventually they fall apart and they're falling over, and it's a de facto billboard that they're putting up there without any regulation or without any approvals. So the change here is just removing the unregistered and unroadworthy from that, so that at the same time they couldn't place a roadworthy trailer out there with a sign on it and leave it, and basically get past the billboard requirements and those types of things. With regards to the mobile signs, because that was part of the discussion we had in looking at this, is how would it affect something like that? And ultimately, we don't regulate what goes on in the right-of-way. So that mobile sign that goes up and down, that this would have no effect on him, as well as he's running his business there. So it wouldn't cause anybody to go out of business there. But if that answers the question, or I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I have a follow-up. So in our neck of the woods, there's right before you get to Needles, there's a big trailer with a huge sign there. Does this affect that? And it's used for multiple things. During elections, used for elections, but it's also used for, I think, promoting some real estate things. Is that included in this?
So if it's parked on a private property based out as a sign, it would affect that. So then, yeah, a trailer like that.
On private or public?
Private or public property.
Even on private? All right, I like it.
I've got a question for Attorney Esplin. Attorney Esplin, what's the distinction in the line between regulating land use and regulating vehicles?
I think it's a good question, Chairman Lingenfelter and Board of Supervisors. It could be a fine line, but here it looks like they are trying to regulate the land. And with the clarification, I had that same question about the mobile vehicle. It doesn't look like it's regulating that either. These are vehicles that are on land, so you're trying to regulate the land. Sometimes that line gets blurred a little bit, but in this one, I think what they're trying to do is regulate the land, so I don't see an issue with that. But I can see how sometimes it could get blurred a bit.
Tim, with regard to Supervisor Angus's question about what problem are you experiencing right now that this is going to solve, I appreciate your explanation, but I didn't hear really the answer of a specific instances that you were up against.
So we received a number of complaints. I think it was that specific trailer down in Mojave Valley, I think last time around. But ultimately what it comes down to is right now, it's unregistered and unroadworthy vehicles that are prohibited from having these signs. This basically just made it to where any vehicle, because whether from a zoning standpoint, if you have a sign on a trailer, whether that trailer is roadworthy or not, you have an unpermitted sign that's being placed in various locations. So.
I guess I'm still a little confused, Tim. Why can't a vehicle or a trailer be used in lieu of a sign?
So, because currently the zoning ordinance does not allow it, and that's based on, funny as it may sound, that's based on private property rights. So if you have your property here and your neighbor decides to put up a whatever size sign on his property, he would have to come in and get that zone, make sure that it meets the zoning requirements to put that sign up so that he's not offending your property rights on your property. If he goes up and puts a trailer, I'm sorry?
Rights don't work that way.
But,
I know that we have in the code, we have, it seems like two separate items. So if you're trying to tackle sign size, that's allowable. I mean, that's for commercial properties, all of it, right? I mean, there's sign guidelines, how big your sign can be. But I don't understand why it matters whether it's posted on a trailer, posted on a vehicle, posted on a billboard that's registered, posted on the side of a building. I mean, if you're gonna regulate sign size, that's one thing. But Mojave County isn't gonna get involved. And I feel like this is, again, something where you might have a really small percentage of instances of people that are trying to ruin it for everybody that's not creating a hazard.
And I appreciate that, Chairman. And really the intent with, I believe with this portion of the ordinance is just that we have the ordinances in place that regulate the sizes, locations, and when they can be up. And those vehicles do not fall within that purview of that ordinance. So basically it's an end run around the sign ordinance in order to be able to use those vehicles, so.
So you're saying if they put a sign on a trailer or a vehicle, then they're doing an end run around the size of signs? Is that what you're saying?
Basically, around the sign ordinance, it would be, correct.
So why not
Because
just
that
say,
wouldn't be
why not
regulated.
just say your sign on a vehicle or trailer can only be this size, or it can't be bigger than this?
I mean, I guess it'd be something we could look at.
Mr. Chair, members of the board. So to kind of go back to Supervisor Angus's question, or what are we trying to fix? In reality, what we were really trying to fix was our smaller signs for like your truck stop type businesses, and that's the G portion of the ordinance. We figured while we were in this ordinance, we can clarify the language of unregistered and unroadworthy in that D portion of the ordinance. So it was kind of a side note. We were just trying to fix that. We already currently regulate trailers and vehicles with signs. We just wanted to clarify that it could also be one that is roadworthy, because how are you to determine whether or not a vehicle is roadworthy or unroadworthy if it's just a trailer sitting up there on the hill? So we were just trying to re-clarify that. But the main portion of this ordinance was to clarify essentially smaller signs on commercial properties. And to get into Chairman Lingenfelter's question is why can't we just allow the signs on the vehicles? And I believe when they put this in the ordinance, it's been in the ordinance for many years, probably since the sign ordinance was adopted. But we regulate each commercial business on the amount of signage that they can have, as far as you can have one freestanding sign per property fronting a right-of-way, and it can be up to a certain size. And we limit that size based on the square footage or the speed limit of the road, the distance from the property, stuff like that. So there's a calculation that goes into each freestanding sign that goes on a property. And to, like Director Walsh mentions, to mitigate anybody just coming in and saying, I'm going to park my vehicle on this property and not have to go through your sign ordinance and get permits and be limited to just my one freestanding sign. I'm going to come and park my vehicle and just put my poster board on the side of it. And so that was, I believe, the intent when they wrote this ordinance way back when, to kind of mitigate multiple people coming in, just parking their vehicles and not putting up actual signs.
Thanks, Scott. District 1 is primarily made up of rural communities, and I just don't think this is going to be helpful to them, so I don't think I'm going to support this, but I'll put it up to the board.
Chairman, if I may, if the board does not want to continue with the unregistered and unroadworthy, striking that portion of it, if I may, the second portion, as Scott mentioned, the intent of this amendment was to allow for those smaller directional signs for these commercial properties, the bolded portion under G7. If there be a way to amend, basically to unstrike the no unregistered or unroadworthy in order to maintain the other changes being proposed.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's different on this than what we did 2 years ago when we had a overzealous code enforcement officer cite 175 roughly people in Mojave Valley for illegal signs. And we went back and took a look at found out that our sign code was less permissive than that of any of the three lower incorporated cities in the county.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Gould, that's correct. We had regulations on what we could put in like as temporary signs. So your A-frame signs, your banners and stuff like that. We were definitely more restrictive than the cities. And that's where we went back 2 years ago and undid all of that. We made it so that they could have those temporary signs, the A-frames, the banners, and that we're not necessarily regulating those. What we found when we went and did a bigger overhaul prior to that of the sign ordinance because of Reed versus Gilbert, we can't regulate signs based on content. We took out a portion of exempt signs that exempted directional signs on, for example, a truck stop. A lot of truck stops like to put a sign near their entrances saying that this is an enter only or RVs this way or something like that, just a smaller sign. And we took out the directional sign because being a directional sign, you have to read it to determine whether or not it was directional. And so we were taking away that content-based regulation and didn't realize that now these larger truck stops or any truck stops couldn't have these directional signs now. And the ordinance that we're placing before you is allowing smaller signs. I think we limited it to 10 square feet and two per entrance so that they could have those directional signs, but we're not regulating it based on directional. We're regulating it the same for everybody. Everybody can have 2 smaller signs per entrance up to this square footage.
So directional signs would be allowed anyway?
No, because we got rid of directional signs as a content-based regulation.
So that was permissive, that the directional signs didn't fall under the sign code?
Correct.
Okay.
So now we're trying.
You're right, that was temporary signs that we did a couple of years ago.
Correct. So this would just allow them to have those same directional signs, but now we're not regulating it based on what's on the sign. We're regulating it based on the size and location.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, you're trying to clarify on the trailers. Is that becoming a problem with roadworthy and unroadworthy trailers? Because I know the most complaints that I receive are from the billboard-sized trailers that are put up using the whole surface for advertising, which takes away from the guys who go through the permits and get everything. So is that something that you need to get rid of, those illegal billboard signs that are going up?
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Johnson, we have seen an uptick in a few complaints of roadworthy vehicles that are being used as signs. We had one as you're going out the 68 that had some language on it. It was a trailer being parked just on a private property that had some language on it. Again, in the near vicinity, there was another vehicle using for advertising. It was a roadworthy vehicle that was just being parked there on a daily basis that we were getting complaints on. So we have seen an uptick of roadworthy vehicles that are being used as signs that we're getting complaints on. As far as the dilapidated trailers, we can still fall under our current ordinance to regulate those. So we have been able to regulate those. It's just the ones that are roadworthy that are just being parked there as a purpose for a sign.
Thank you. I think the county does need to address that. That's my personal opinion. I've had numerous complaints on that. It'll only get worse if we don't take it up. Thank you.
guess, no action is being taken on this. So we'll move to item number 75 if I don't hear a motion. Item 75.
I'll make a motion.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Johnson?
I'll make a motion to approve.
That motion. Do I have a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. All right, we'll move to item number 75. No action is taken on 74. 75 is a public hearing. Discussion and possible action, approve the adoption of BOS Ordinance 2023-08, an amendment to the Mojave County Zoning Ordinance, Section 25, to clarify the process to rezone the property to an SD, Special Development Zone. Commission recommended approval by unanimous vote. Let's see here, we've got one person signed up to speak. Ruth Ross.
Honorable members of the board, staff, and fellow citizens, my name is Ruth Ross. It is with respect for the established process that I come before you today and on behalf of and to present the consensus of a large number of members of my community. With regard to this proposed amendment, we most rigorously request that you vote against. In preparing for today, I came across a list of all the zone designations. I started with A zone and found that there is a very specific list of rules by which the use of the land can be determined. Each subsequent zone had just such a list: what you could have, what you could ask for, and what you could not have. And so it was with all the zones except for SD. While it still had the same headings, the wordings was filled with conditional language. Must be acceptable to the commission. Each phase or stage must be submitted to the planning staff. Special developments are just that, special. With complex components, it can start out on multiple zoning designations, depending on the size of the project. And speaking of size, I cannot imagine a special development being less than 3 acres. This zoning designation is intended for large, unusual, or mixed components. Most supermarkets have more than an acre of parking lot. Setting aside the unfortunate offhanded manner in which the commission addressed the proposal, their motion states an amendment to the Mojave County Zoning Ordinance, Section 25, to clarify the process to rezone the property to an SD zone. I question the grammar of the property, as that implies a specific property. But moving on, I would like to address the rather misleading wording given to the commission. Quote, the proposed amendment removes the language to avoid confusion and to ensure that the standard process to rezone a property remains, and clarifies that the Planning and Zoning Commission can give a recommendation of either approval or denial. The wording that's being referred to is, quote, the zoning proposal must be acceptable to the commission and recommended to the board. The wording is clear, there's no confusion, and it has purpose. There is nothing standard about special development. Special development requires significant, multifaceted review and continued oversight, as indicated in the wording of the entire section, a job that is for the expertise of the planning department and the planning commission. So I implore you to vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
It's the last person we had signed up. I'm going to close the public hearing. I'll open it up to the board.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Angus?
I think it came into our psyche when we did the rezone that we ended up rescinding, and that wording about having to be approved by planning and zoning and the board of supervisors came into play. And I think that's what we're clearing up. And Thank you for your words, but I believe that that is a statute thing. The planning and zoning is only an advisory. That's all. And if they can approve something unanimously, and we can deny it, and vice versa. The people who are on that board are appointees of ours to advise us. And again, I believe that's statute. So do you want to explain that?
Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisor Angus, you took the words out of my mouth. That's correct. Sections 11.802 and ARS 11.802 and 11.814 both describe the Planning and Zoning Commission and describe it exactly that way, that they are an advisory committee or advisory commission to the Board of Supervisors. And in addition to that, if there's any dissent from any rezone action, a second public hearing is required additionally to that. So if the Planning and Zoning Commission approves something unanimously and there's no dissent, it can come before the board, but the board still has to approve it through the consent agenda. So the Planning and Zoning Commission is an advisory committee, whereas the board is a legislative committee and has to act on that. So you're correct. The purpose of this was to clarify that language. It was somewhat confusing as saying that it had to be acceptable to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Well, acceptable, our understanding at the time that they wrote that, or in reading that, our understanding was it was a complete submittal. So the commission reviewed it as a complete submittal and made a recommendation, but the view, I think, is that acceptable meant that they had to approve it, and that's by state statute. That's definitely not the case.
Tim, how did that wording get there in the first place?
It's a good question. I don't know specifically how it was placed that way, but I'll read it. It basically says that the zoning proposal must be acceptable to the commission and recommended to the Board of Supervisors by procedures as required by ARS, by this ordinance and ARS. So
Is that written here in Mojave County? That wasn't taken from some state document.
To my knowledge,
So when it was shown to me, and I was a little surprised because and I think that you don't really, in the law, in the big picture, you don't really want that because planning and zoning are appointed, they are unelected bureaucrats in a way. Yeah, not really bureaucrats. They're doing us a favor. They're not paid. They're doing us a favor by vetting these things. And the ultimate decision must always be with your elected board because we're the ones that you come to. So, I was surprised to see that there because I knew that it was against state statute when I saw it.
And that's why we're cleaning it. Yep. Thank you.
Tim, I have a question for you before you leave the podium. Before I vote to get rid of something, I always like to at least think that there was a reason why something was put in. And I try to understand what the reason was that Mojave County put this in so many years ago. What's the history behind it? I mean, maybe you don't know, but I like to at least try to understand why something was done.
Chairman, I wish I had a better answer for you. Like I said, my understanding and my reading of it is not so much that it must be approved by the commission, but rather that it's acceptable to them. It's an acceptable application. They've received
I read it, I understand it. I just don't understand. I mean, what was the genesis for putting that in there? There had to be something that happened here years ago that said, hey, maybe we should put this in, and then they got the board to approve it, obviously, so.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is just my opinion in reading it. I believe when they created this zone, they wanted to create it so that it could be an option to be able to allow other uses in the county. They wanted to make sure that it would go before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And so they added this additional language to make sure that it goes through the same process because it's not like the other zones. The other zones are spelled out specifically, the AR, the RE, the R1s, and it goes through the rezone process. This is a different zone. So my understanding, my opinion, is that they were just trying to make sure that it goes through the same process, but put a little bit too much wording into that, is my opinion.
Thank you, Scott. That helps me. So by removing this language, is the SD zone, are they not going to they're not going to have to go through the same process? They're not going to go through the same rezone process as all the other designations, or they will?
Chairman, they will continue with
They
the
will
same
continue
rezone
to
as
be.
everything else.
Okay,
Yep.
that's important. Okay, thank you. It's the pleasure of the board.
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. You've heard that motion. For that motion and second, any additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item number 76 is a public hearing. Discussion and possible action, approve the adoption of BOS Ordinance 2023-05, an amendment to Mojave County Ordinance 2021-03, the Building Code Ordinance to adopt proposed changes to the Building Code to exempt shipping containers from building permits if used for storage and with no utilities. Commission recommended approval by unanimous vote. We have two people signed up to speak. Philip Robinson.
Morning, y'all. Like I told you last Monday, when we were called to the public, leave us alone. I don't even have one. I can't put it on my property. However, I have my property situated in my trees. But the other people that have storage containers, that's what they are, storage containers. And yes, some of them have to go through planning and zoning to get their shops put in. I don't know what this is all about. People are doing the right thing. You know, it's kind of like him saying, oh, they just dump in the desert. The people that do abide by the rules are doing it. So enough's enough. Leave it alone. Thank you.
Chuck DeShazer.
Good morning, my name's Chuck DeShazer, 8778 Polaris Road, Topeka, Arizona. I really don't have a problem with doing this, but I gotta ask why, because these containers have been around for 70 years. They're currently from going before the Board of, or the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it hasn't been here yet on this one, but they're currently undefined. They're like a unicorn. Nobody has any regulation over them currently. And yet, when I bring up, like I say, we haven't heard from Tim and everybody to find out what they want to do with it to be able to speak accurately on it. But as my reading of this goes, we have International Residential Code. They're changing section 105.2, work exempt from permits. Number one is one-story detached accessory structures. Then they are adding this one in as a number two, which is shipping containers. And shipping containers, regardless of size, to be used for storage purposes would be exempt from any kind of permit. The problem I have with this is when we get to the next item, they're trying to shoehorn this in as an accessory structure. The wording of this would indicate that it wouldn't be a 2, it would be a 1A if you want to call it an accessory structure. It in no way is an accessory structure. And like I say, it hasn't seemed to be an issue for 70 years, so why, you know, the chief building official who's been in violation for the last year on his own property of many things is able to write something that doesn't seem to be an issue at all at this point because they're undefined. He's smarter than the International Building Code, I guess, and everybody else out there that writes this that we adopt from. So I just don't understand why we need to do it. I'm not against it, saying we have more freedom than we currently have to not need a permit. Like, I shouldn't need a permit for anything on my property unless it's their property and I'm just buying it back. Oh yeah, I am with my property taxes every year.
Danielle Keck?
Thank you, Supervisor Lingenfelter and Board, Danielle Keck. Yes, so I like the idea of exempting storage, shipping containers regardless of size, because right now under the current ordinance, they're over, if you get the bigger ones, by 20 feet. So I think that is important, but I am concerned of the wording if it is going to classify them as a accessory structure, because that is not what they are. And it does seem like between items 76 and 77, there is a loophole they are trying to create regulation. So I just think that we need to better understand why this needs to go in. But I do like the wording saying that if they're just used for storage without utilities, they are exempt, because right now, the current one, they are not. The size, it doesn't make sense, 300 feet and 320 feet for the larger containers. But I do appreciate the narrative that they put into the agenda. So it does kind of clarify what they're saying, but I would like to hear from them directly as well. Thank you.
It's the last person we had signed up. Ms. Esposito, step down.
Thank you, Chairman Lingenfelter. Obviously, this is a much better option than the other one that was tabled and brought back. I think that as someone who owns property in the rural areas, any reasonable person would much rather have a cargo container on their neighbor's property or their own property than their stuff just laying about. You know, most of the complaints I think we hear are related to, my neighbor's got a bunch of junk laying all over the place, and it's already been admitted that enforcement of everything is sort of complaint driven, which is kind of a violation of the equal treatment, equal protection thing, when I'll pick on this guy, but I'll leave those 5 properties over there alone. You know, making it possible for people to put their stuff out of sight, out of mind, and store it is a good thing. If there's a problem with the labeling as an accessory, whatever, okay, deal with that. But this is a much better option than the other options, so I would much prefer to see this. I would just like to add to that I think you should direct staff to go back and bring back a similar proposal for the prefabricated barn things, which you were gracious enough to grant a 300 square foot exemption for and carve that out. However, there are some other, and those are even more attractive than the storage containers. You know, if I have to, don't mind either one, but rather have the barn thing. But as long as you're only using it for storage of your stuff, I think that it would be great if either one and both were exempted, from the International Property Maintenance Code, which really shouldn't apply to the rural areas anyways. But I just, maybe you could at some point address that issue and go a little bit larger with that as well, because we have a county supervisor who got around the exemption for the tiny home thing by buying a shed and hooking up stuff to it by calling it storage. But if you're using it for actual storage and there's no water or electric being wired into it, it's storage. Let's go. Do it. Keep it simple. Thank you.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Director Walsh, you want to come up and speak on this issue, please?
Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board, thank you. This item, basically what it's doing is, just as it mentioned, that we're removing the requirement for a building permit for storage containers. As was mentioned, currently up to 300 square foot is exempt. Some of your larger storage containers get up to 320 square foot. So this would include those. So rather than going through 320, 480 or whatever it is, we just said any shipping container would be exempt from building permits. So as far as accessory structures, any structure on a property that is accessory to the primary use is considered an accessory structure. So that's why this falls under that definition.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Discussion? What's the pleasure of the board? Supervisor Gould.
I move that item 76 be adopted.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Item number 77, regular agenda. Adoption, I'm going to read this for those that aren't here and that don't have the agenda in front of them. Approve the adoption of BOS Ordinance 2023-04, an amendment to the Mojave County zoning ordinance, section 37D, location of accessory buildings, to allow the placement of metal storage containers. Mojave County, Arizona Commission recommended approval by a 6-1 vote. Continued by the Board of Supervisors at our July 3rd, 2023 meeting. Director Walsh, you want to come explain this issue?
Thank you, Chairman. Based on our last meeting, staff went back and revised the ordinance to reflect some of the comments that were mentioned. Initially, we had looked at a number of different options as far as size of what size of container you could have based on acreage. We went back and revised it and basically placed it under, basically we said that a storage container can be placed on all residential and commercial zones in the same manner as an accessory structure, that it will not count towards the open lot storage, but shall count towards the maximum allowed lot coverage, and that any utilities or occupancy would require all the necessary permits. So currently they're counted towards open lot storage. If you have a storage container on your property, this would take it outside of open lot storage and basically treat it as if it were, as was mentioned, the barns or the sheds that people can put on their property. So they would still meet the setback requirements that you would for any accessory structure, but other than that, it's treated just as an accessory structure.
Great. We've got two folks that are signed up to speak on this issue. First is Mr. Chuck DeShazer.
Yes, my name's Chuck DeShazer, 8778 Polaris Road, Topeka, Arizona. I've basically been following this since it went to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And what we have here is a problem that they're trying to put these under accessory structures from the Utah border down to Parker. And what it comes down to is, so if you don't build a house or whatever is required in various zonings, you can't even put one of these containers on your property. I've asked Scott several times to, as you can see from what I just presented to the clerk of the board, to place it under open lot storage rather than under accessory structures, which accessory structures is 37D. I present to you that we put it under 37O. If you look at the third page, the underline at the very bottom is the only thing that needs to be done in this instance. And it does exactly what they have already asked us to, that they're trying to help us out with, is what they keep telling us, that they want to pull them out of open lot storage so that they don't have 400, 600, whatever the number of open complaints are that they currently have, that they're going to be our friends and give us more storage or more open lot square footage. And the response I got from Scott was, well, your proposal doesn't allow us to regulate them. Well, you can't regulate them now because there is no definition for them, and you have plenty of regulation if you hook up power, or you hook up water or anything like that, but I don't feel that you need to regulate anything that is on my private property that I privately own unless you want to pay me for it. That would be something else, like the Fifth Amendment says you'd have to. But what it comes down to is these guys want to regulate stuff, and they've put in under accessory structures, and there's plenty of containers throughout this county that are already, they don't want them on any vacant lots. And I've already gone through a Freedom of Information Act to ask, well, where are all these complaints that you have about the storage containers? And the response I got was from their office that, oh, they couldn't tell me that because they don't have any program in their computer system to tell them what complaints are under what categories. So I got 0 as a response for the complaints involving storage containers. So if they try to come up here and tell you that, yeah, we have all these complaints, well, I can tell you I've heard of a chupacabra. That doesn't mean they exist. You know, you just can't start regulating stuff if it hasn't been a problem since 1954 when these things were invented. You know, it doesn't need to be a problem now. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle Keck.
Thank you, Supervisor Lingenfelter and Board. Danielle Keck for the record. I do want to just go by a side by side. I hope you guys can see that. So I'm not only representing myself and my family today, I am representing 241 other families that are opposed to this proposed ordinance, who are very concerned about what it would do to their current situation. And I went ahead and looked up 37O open lot storage shipping container spaces. Can we get this up on the screen, please? So right now, if you have a ½ acre or less, you're allowed 200 square feet. The new proposed ordinance would be for a ½ acre or less, 160 square feet, which you would lose 40 square feet. If you have a ½ acre to an acre, you're currently allowed 500 square feet. For a ½ acre to 1 acre, it'd be reduced to 160 square feet, where you would lose around 340 square feet. 1 to 2 acres, you're allowed 500 square feet. 1 to 2 acres, it would be reduced to 320 square feet, a loss of 180 square feet. 2 to 3 acres, 1,000 square feet. 2 to 3 acres, 320 square feet, a loss of 680 square feet. 3 to 4 acres, you're allowed 2,000 square feet. 3 to 4 acres for the proposed one, 320 square feet, a loss of 1,680 square feet. 4 to 5 acres, you're allowed 2,000 square feet. 4 to 5 acres would be reduced down to 320 square feet, which is a loss of 1,680 square feet. If you have more than 5 acres, for every 5 acres, you're allowed 2% of your property, which the calculation I did, which please correct me if I'm wrong, 1 acre is approximately 43,560 square feet. So 5 acres times 43,560 is 217,800 square feet. 2% of that is 4,356 square feet. So we would be reduced down to 320 square feet per 5 acres for metal shipping containers, which is a loss of 4,036 square feet. So I don't see anywhere where this is going to be helping people in their current situations. And as a community, we cannot find this ordinance would benefit us. It will only create a hardship for the majority of residents that would automatically fall outside of the allowable square footage, which would make it more difficult for us to attain metal cargo containers, which will not help clean up the valley, which I think is one of the bigger issues. And also, I just want to know, are they allowed to go back in and change the backup materials after it's been posted publicly? Because Mr. Chuck and myself have been working behind the scenes, and they keep going in and putting stuff up, taking it back, putting stuff up, taking it back, which is making it very hard for us to stay on top of what they're trying to actually propose. Thank you.
This is our last speaker. I'll close the public hearing. Open it up to the board. Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't a public hearing. Sorry, everybody. I'll open it up to the board. Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we removed all that language on open lot storage.
It's back on there.
Tim?
Chairman, members of the board, just for clarification, that was the initial proposal. After the last meeting, we revised it. However, due to some of the statutes that the clerk has to abide by, the initial item, the way it was posted has to be posted the same way. All that backup has to maintain with that same item when it gets continued. So that's the reason why you see some of the old language in that backup, is that's what was initially proposed to the board, but since the last meeting, that's been changed and the new language has been added to it.
Thank you for clarifying that, Tim. I appreciate it. Supervisor Angus?
Tim, the speaker had that chart. Do you dispute any of that? Are those numbers real?
So that chart's since been revised. So that was the initial proposal that we brought in. And what was being proposed is that in addition to the open lot storage that's allowed on those various sizes, the container would be on top of that. So they would be able to maintain their open lot storage that's allowed by ordinance. And in addition to that, they could have the storage containers that was being proposed. However, based on the discussion that was held at the last meeting, it's since been revised to treat them as accessory structures.
Okay, I'm a little confused. So, but she was correct showing us how much they're losing
No.
with the new.
So Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisor Angus, so I think she had a wrong perception that in lieu of the open lot storage, they would now only get this shipping container. The initial proposal was in addition to the allowed open lot storage, they would have the shipping container in addition to that. So it was actually increasing the amount of open lot storage that they would have because the container was not being counted against it. However, based on the discussion, that's since gone, and now we're treating it just as accessory structures. So they maintain the same amount of open lot storage, and they can put as many containers as is allowed by accessory structures, which is up to 60% lot
So this is giving more flexibility to people. They're not, taking anything away.
Correct.
You're adding things. We're trying to leave you alone. I keep hearing you say that. I understand. So this would help, as I understand it.
That's our intent.
All right, thank you.
Tim, that was my understanding as well. I mean, now these things are not going to count against the 60% lot coverage ratio or whatever it was, right?
So, Chairman, so there's two different ratios that we deal with. So there's the open lot storage, which is, she had her chart there that showed the amount of open lot storage based on lot size. And then there's the lot coverage, the 60% lot coverage. Lot coverage actually deals with building structures, so this would count towards the 60% lot coverage, so number of structures that you could put up, but it would not count against the open lot storage that they would.
Right. So, thank you. Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Walsh, since these are accessory structures, can they still be placed on a vacant piece of land?
They can be placed on AR and RE without a primary structure. Okay. So on your smaller lots, your residential lots, they would need a primary structure before they could be
Which
placed.
is the same ordinance that we currently have.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Gould.
I move that item 77 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. You've heard that motion and second. Any additional discussion? All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item number 78, discussion and possible action, acknowledge receipt of the code enforcement report requested at the July 17th, 2023 Board of Supervisors meeting regarding code enforcement cases for assessor parcel numbers 229-22-035P and 229-22-035Q. Director Walsh.
Chairman Lingenfelter, if I may, I'd like to have Scott go ahead and give the presentation.
You
on this
bet.
one. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I believe it was a meeting ago, we had the board requested that we give a brief history and a progress report on these, the Mesner properties that have been complained about at the board meetings quite often. We have been dealing with these properties for quite some time. The initial complaint that we received was back in 2016, January of 2016. Through that process, we were able to achieve self-compliance on that complaint. He was able to correct the violation, and we closed the case in November of 2016. We received a new complaint on the property in the beginning of 2018. With that, we were not able to achieve compliance. I guess we do have some slides that popped up. Just to go back to the slides, this was the initial complaint that we received. And then in November of 2016, this is the corrected portion of that violation, and we closed the case. We do not have an initial picture of the 2018 complaint, but during that process, we were able to not achieve self-compliance with the owner and ended up having to go to court. At that time period, our only option for compliance, to get somebody to comply, was to take them to court and charge them criminally. We charged him criminally. We spent 2 years in court hearings, competent compliance hearings, and 2 bench warrants. We ended up having to close the case because it was adjudicated, and even though it was non-compliant, they didn't achieve compliance because the court decided that it was adjudicated. We ended up closing the case. We shortly after opened a new case because we received a new complaint in January of 2019. With that complaint, we found that Mr. Besner was not going to be self-compliant again. And again, our only mechanism for compliance was to charge him criminally. We took him to court again. With that, he spent 30 days in jail. He had a 12-month probation. We had compliance meetings with him for 6 months. In that adjudication, Mr. Mesner met the stipulations of the court, and we ended up having to close the case again because of the adjudication that was brought. We ended up, as you can see in the slideshows, the slideshows aren't super great. They show that the property still maintains a non-compliant status according to our definition. But because it was adjudicated in the court and they met the stipulations of the court, we had to close the case. We shortly opened a new case in April of 2023. This is our current case that we have open. With that case, we do have a new mechanism for enforcement. A while back, the Board of Supervisors allowed us to, or combine the abatement process from environmental health. With that, we're able to use our ordinance that was created in 2020-07 that allows our code enforcement team to abate properties that have the junk and debris. That being said, with this case, we're currently working with Mr. Mesner. He has removed upwards of 30 to 40 tons of his violation. These are still from the court case. This was the beginning of in April of 2023. This was the complaint that we received. In July of 2023, it still has quite a bit that needs to be done. We just went in this month, August 2nd, and we have seen significant improvement. Mr. Mesner does seem to be motivated by the abatement process. Our abatement process does not require us to go through the court system. We have notified Mr. Mesner that he will be abated. This is another view of the property that has shown significant progress. There were several occupied RVs that also have been removed from the property. We have notified Mr. Mesner that we are in the process of abating his property. And as long as we see significant improvement each time that we go and inspect his property, we will continue to give him extensions. As long as we do not, at the time that we do not see significant progress, we will move forward with the abatement. And I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Supervisor Angus.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. It's shocking.
Yes.
It's just shocking. You know, that's been going on for 6, 7 years. And what I'm hearing is he does a little, he gets out of it. He did serve some jail time. I mean, I don't know anybody who'd want to live next door to that. And that whole area has to be taken care of. But it seems to me that you've gotten into sort of a rut with this guy where he does the bare minimum, maybe goes to court, it gets adjudicated, and it's a cycle. And we've taught him, basically, that if he does this bare minimum, that we'll just say, okay, next time. So is there anything harsher we can do, or is this just going to go on for the next decade?
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Angus, as I mentioned, on those previous cases, we did not have the abatement, the ability to abate the property. And so our only mechanism for enforcement was the criminal charges and going to court. It did not seem to be a motivation for Mr. Mesner. Now that we have been using the abatement as the enforcement technique on this last case, we have seen significant improvement. But also, if he does not do it, we will clean it up. On the other 2 cases that were adjudicated, we weren't able to do anything because the judge said he met the stipulations, and there was nothing that we could do about it, except for open a new case and then start the process again. In this instance, now that we do have the abatement funds, we do have the abatement program and process in place. That's what we're using to help him be motivated to clean his property. But then if he doesn't, we will do it for him, and it will get clean.
Explain that. So we do that for them, and then we get reimbursed how?
We end up putting a lien on the property, and a lot of times we do not end up receiving that lien back.
Yeah, we end up with nothing.
Correct.
So now we're telling him, okay, we're going to do it for you. I don't know. Again, it's just been shocking that this thing keeps coming up and coming out. Mr. Stang has come up in front of us so many times. It's just shocking.
Mr. Chairman,
Manager Elters.
I just have a suggestion. Given the history here, which has been going on for 7 years, given the option of abatement, which we have not exercised, but we continue to use it or leverage it. Some progress is made, but it's not significant. We never get to the finished line. I'm just wondering if it's time that we give the property owner a time period, a 60-day, a 90-day, a 30-day. My suggestion, and we can do so with your blessing as the board, but we pick a reasonable timeline, we establish a date, and we say by that time, you need to be in compliance. Otherwise, we will move in and abate it and put a lien on the property. If the intent is to get to a finished line and establish results, that would be my suggestion to the board.
But then we go in, you pay for it, and then it just happens all over again. It doesn't seem to be any sort of big penalty for accumulating this junk.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, I see your point. These are the tools that we have today. We can use them, and if indeed it continues, at some point, we have to consider options beyond abatement, and I don't know what that is at this point, but at least we will utilize the tools that we have available to us and hopefully achieve the intended outcome. I know the board keeps hearing about this property from the neighbors,
And this is one way of accelerating or applying some pressure to get it done.
Okay.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ryan, we're prevented from foreclosing on this property to enforce the lien because it's a homestead.
Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisor Gould, if I could just verify, does he live at the property?
Mr. Chair, Ryan, yes, he does live at the property. We currently do not have any liens on the property because we have not yet abated it.
Yeah. To answer Supervisor Gould's question, most likely we would not be able to because of the homestead exemption. If you reside at the property, then he'll likely be able to claim the homestead exemption.
So if we abate it, then all we're doing is providing a free cleanup service for him then? And
Yeah,
making room for more new junk.
We have one person signed up to speak, Armin Stange, excuse me.
Morning Supervisors. The property 29-22035Q, it's only 0.9 acres. It's not supposed to be living there. There's not supposed to be a house there, nothing. That is what is AR zoned for. And then the other property, 4359, it's at 035P. I drove by there this morning. Surprise! There's another fifth wheel sitting in front of the house with someone living in there. What's going on? I mean, we're dealing with this forever and a day. How much money is that costing the county right now? That's a question for the county manager. How much money we're spending on our tax money to appease him, to enable him to keep this junk in our neighborhood? I mean, somewhere there needs to be a point. And I am at the point. If nothing is done with him, I can guarantee you I'm looking for an attorney. And I'm not playing nice then. So far, I'm very nice. I'm coming to you, I let you do. But 6 years, 2 prison terms for him, 30 days in jail, that's bullshit. I'm done with this. Something needs to be done, and the county manager needs to do something, not wasting our tax money. And the same thing with development services and code enforcement. They are wasting my tax money. For what? That I live next to a junkyard? You get rid of him, you clean up the neighborhood in one shot. Then he is the one who runs all the chop shops and everything. In 2017, he got charged with running a chop shop. He got charged with the weapons possession as a prohibited possessor, and he had a stolen vehicle on his property. Where did the charges go? That's something for the county attorney. He should have refiled the charges on him. So I guess I said enough, and I hope you do something about him. Then, you know, give him 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. That's not working with him. He don't give a damn, excuse my language, but what you say, it goes right by him. He's used to prison. You need to take the properties away from him. 4359 and 4365 is under standard. 4359 is 0.9 acres, and the other one is even smaller. There's not supposed to be houses on there. So you need to get rid of the houses. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
I think, you want to?
Okay, is there a condemnation process? At what point can we actually condemn if it's unhealthy, if it's illegal, all of that?
Supervisor Angus, I don't know the answer right now, but I'd be happy to research to look. I mean, generally condemnation is for public use. You know, if you're trying to widen a roadway or create a new road, that's where you typically see condemnation, also known as eminent domain. But we can look into that to see if there's another avenue. I'd be happy to look into this further.
I would appreciate it. I mean,
Sure.
and the other definition of condemn, I think.
Chairman,
Just a second. Supervisor Gould, you had a comment?
And that's good that Director Walsh is that. Mr. Schrank spoke of, I believe it's a deed restriction on those properties that said there's not supposed to be a home on anything less than an acre in that area. Who enforces those? If it's you see stuff on deeds like out in Butler, it says no farm animals, but it says you can have fowl. Who enforces those deed restrictions that were placed on the owner when they subdivided the area?
Chairman
And they're
Lingenfelter,
not in a homeowners association either.
Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisor Gould, I believe as far as a deed restriction, I don't believe that we really pursue any of those from the county standpoint. I would assume that would be, and I'll lean on Attorney Esplin, but I would assume that would be between the seller and the buyer placing that restriction on it. If the purchaser did not comply with that restriction, I believe that would be a civil issue between the seller and that purchaser.
That's correct. I mean, it's a transaction between the seller and the buyer, and the seller could then come back and enforce it.
So the enforcer would be the person that sold the property to that individual?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's another issue, like if something's dedicated to the public, if they've dedicated something to the public, then maybe the public could do it, but that's not what we have here. That's not what we got going on.
So there's really nobody to enforce it. So would it have to be the person that added that deed restriction on the deed? Or could it be a previous owner to the person that owns it now?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know the answer, but
It's not the county.
Correct.
Okay.
Except like the example I'm thinking of is just like if somebody dedicates right away to the public.
Sure.
And then now the public can and the county can, and we have enforced that in the past. Or we've tried to at least. But
Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, on the Supervisor Angus's question regarding condemnation and that, in looking at the building, we've not had any dangerous building complaints. Because looking at that as well, it's more on this property. It's been the open lot storage issue that we've come into, and I completely sympathize with Mr. Stange. We're at our wits' end dealing with this property ourselves, so I can't imagine Mr. Stange is having to look at that every day, each day out his door, and it's something that we have been pursuing, as has been mentioned, but for 7 years now. Just to reiterate some of the things that Scott had said, we've been pursuing this from a civil matter and from a criminal matter, pursuing charges for not complying with the zoning ordinance. Ryan's office has done a great job in finding us other avenues to pursue, and it appears, and I agree with the board's comments regarding us paying to clean it up for him and probably not seeing that funding again. What we have seen though with Mr. Mesner is he, even though to most of us it looks like a bunch of junk and debris, he has certain value on that property. In his eyes, he sees that as valuable. So our attempts at and our threats to abate the property for him and take it all to the landfill has had some motivation for him. How long that motivation lasts, I don't know how long that'll last, but ultimately we're pursuing it from both ways of, hey, either you get rid of it or we're going to get rid of it for you and it'll be cleaned up, and then we'll continue to pursue the other avenues basically through criminal charges as well if that doesn't work. But when you have somebody that's not afraid to go back to jail, the criminal side doesn't really give you a lot of motivation.
Supervisor Angus.
Yeah, our preliminary research also showed that there are unpaid taxes on this property. Has anyone looked into that?
I've not looked into that, but we can look into that issue as well.
I've got a question for Attorney Esplin. At some point, if there are unpaid taxes, it would go to a tax lien sale, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
My question for you, maybe I'm a little confused, and maybe the homestead exemption thing would prohibit, but is the structure that he's living in right now, is that compliant with all of the codes that we have in Mojave County?
That's, Chairman Lingenfelter, that's my understanding. We've not received any complaints as far as the structure that he's living in being out of compliance. But if, that would be an option. If it was a dangerous building, we would pursue the dangerous structure route and could condemn it as has been suggested. However, generally the complaints that we've received on this property have all been the open lot storage or unpermitted RVs with occupants and those types.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, could he clean this up with storage containers?
Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisor Johnson, that could definitely be an option.
It's a pleasure of the board. Any action taken? No action taken. Unless you want to, I guess, direct staff to set a deadline as the county manager had recommended. And then debate.
Chairman, if I may, on that, we are working, we've given, basically we go out there and as Scott had mentioned, we as long as we're seeing progress, significant progress, we've added 30 days in this specific time frame, but definitely we could set that hard deadline of 90 days. It needs to all be cleaned up. Otherwise, we're going to bring in our subcontractors to, or our contractors in order to clean it up for him.
Bring in the bulldozer. That's right.
Yep.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Walsh, do we have a cost estimate on what it would cost to abate that?
We have not got that yet. Judging by what I'm seeing there and some of the other ones that we've done, I'd say for something like this and the amount of metal and those types of things, the metal we could get some recycling back out of, but I'd say probably 20 or higher, that it would 20,000 that would probably cost to do.
Thank you, sir.
I have just one more question. Is any of this considered a health hazard?
Depending on the material that's there, and I'll have Scott speak to that, but it could definitely, if there's decomposable material there, definitely it would be a health hazard.
So you have to wait to get a complaint? Is that it, the process, or? I mean, it's been 7 years you've been out there. So I'm asking you if there's a health crisis there.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Angus, when the code enforcement took over the abatement process for environmental health, we took over that abatement process, and essentially if there's household trash outside of bags, that's when we can go and abate, and it would be a health issue. The other issue would be is if they see varmints or rodents or cockroaches or something, an extensive amount of those items on the property, those would fall under the health purview. We have not seen that on this property from our inspections, and Mr. Mesner actually lets us on his property to inspect, and we have not seen any health violations, and we have not had to forward that to our health department yet.
Chairman Lingenfelter, if I could jump in on that. Thank you. Supervisor Angus, I just know, it looks like back in 2017, there was a criminal action that was filed, and it was pursuant to the violations of environmental health, but this was back in 2017. So at some point, there was some kind of environmental issue going on.
Supervisor Gould.
There was, I think, domestic household trash on there.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Thank you.
Is there any action necessary on this, or should we just go on to number 79?
Do we have to bring it back to set, like you suggested, set a time limit, or is that just something that we recommend that you do?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, the item says discussion and possible action. I believe the board could direct staff to say, notify the property owner of the need to comply within this many days. My suggestion would be 60, maybe 90.
How about this? How about direct staff to do everything that they can do to rectify the situation? That covers everything.
that would work for us. My suggestion is it would be great to have a timeline, because he really has, clearly to you, clearly to the audience.
How about a week?
If that's what the board wants, I'm just trying to, so if we go to court
Okay, so what is the
afterward.
acceptable, what would you recommend?
Mr. Chairman, my recommendation would be 60 days. If the board thinks that's too long, I would recommend 45, no less than 45, and we make it clear, in 45 days, you're either in, 45 or 60, you're in compliance, or we move in and abate, and at least we'll achieve compliance. The history here is that that may not be the end of it, but again,
Right.
as we abate it, we can look for other
I don't
options.
know why we have to give him the benefit of the doubt. I say 30 days. We have given him so much time.
30
We
days
know
it
what
is.
he's going to do, so let's just get on with it.
Chairman, just one note, and we can definitely make 30 days work. We would just need to give him a 30-day notice, which allows him the time to appeal it. So we would issue our notice that you have to this date, we're going to abate it on this date, and that would give him the time to come in and appeal it if he so chose.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Gould.
I move that the Board of Supervisors advise Community Development Services to issue a 30-day notice to Mr. Mesner to clean up his property, or that we will abate it.
Thank you.
Second,
For that motion and second, any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item number 79. Director Latowski?
Good morning, Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board. This is a accept and refer petition for a 1 mile section of Bank Street in the North Kingman area for consideration for tertiary maintenance. Again, just requesting an acceptance, an acknowledgement, and referring to staff.
Thank you. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item number 80. Director Latowski.
Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board, this item requests the board consider reestablishing the position of an assistant public works director in the Public Works Department, which previously was dissolved in 2009 in lieu of creating deputy county manager positions at the time. The request, if approved, would enable us to recruit at a higher range for a civil engineer with subject matter expertise in water systems and facilities, and oversee the day-to-day operations of those specific divisions with water systems and facilities. The problem statement here concerns, and I think it was punctuated by Craig Sullivan last week in his presentation, is the exceptional demand for engineering, or engineers in general, attributed to the substantial spending in various sectors of engineering, namely transportation, the building industry, electronics, etc., demanding electrical and mechanical, and of course civil engineers. There's only about 26,000 civil engineers nationwide. We're not seeing graduating civil engineers to the extent of other careers, if you will. So right now the demand is squarely in the favor of the engineering community, and again, requesting this position be established to enable us to be more competitive in our recruitment. Simply stated, as I stand here today, I am the only licensed professional engineer in the Public Works Department. The history of Public Works over the last couple, 2-3 decades has usually seen the department carry about 4 to 5 licensed professional engineers, but due to the state of the industry right now and the tremendous demand for civil engineers and also mechanical and electrical engineers, that this is what we're working with right now.
Manager Elters, typically, things like this would come through the county manager's office. I mean, do you see the need for this position? Any thoughts on this?
Mr. Chairman and board members, thank you for asking. And yes, indeed, I have been involved and I support it. And I do so with a couple of thoughts. One is we are currently shorthanded in our Public Works Department. We have had an engineering manager vacant for about a part of 2 years now. We have not perhaps noticed the vacancy because Steve has taken on more functions, and his background being a traffic and transportation has enabled him to assume more responsibilities and pick up the slack. I think the departure of our water area engineer has now exacerbated that shortage. There is a significant shortage out there, as you just heard from Steve, and our ability to compete in the market, to attract and retain, has truly been hampered. This is an opportunity to make it more attractive. It doesn't guarantee that we will get somebody up here, but it will really enhance our chances. And the size of the department, the number of personnel, the budget, and the issues, I think justifies this approach. We would appreciate it's being done with the need in mind, and it truly is warranted. So we appreciate the board's support for that.
Is it a net savings? Is that what I read?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, board members, it is a net savings. The structure is to cover water and parks and other divisions within the department. So it's a net savings for some divisions. It's more impact for others, but it's really all minimal in the big scheme of things, Mr. Chairman. We have a lot of salary saving because we have the vacancies in the department that we have not been able to fill.
Thank you. Questions from the board? What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that item 80 be adopted.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? You guys appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. We took care of 81 last Monday. Item 82, Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where were we with this?
Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board, Supervisor Gould, the point at which we left off with the board's last discussion on this item, and this concerns a section of Rancho Vista Drive in the Havasu Heights area that is not maintained by the county, but the county has a right-of-way that was assigned to it by the BLM. Staff provided a memo presenting the timeline of development, and namely how staff actually got actively involved with Mr. Arlo Cox toward the interest of Mr. Cox at least maintaining the road for his use and for use potentially of adjacent property owners. So it boiled down to this. Both myself and the engineering manager got actively involved in presenting Mr. Cox with a couple of options by which he could maintain Rancho Vista going forward. One of which would be if Mr. Cox did desire to alter the profile of the roadway in any way, working with his engineer, that the county adopted engineering standards does provide for a design policy for very low volume roadways of like less than 200 average daily traffic. And those standards can be applied in such a manner that could keep the roadway within the 30-foot disturbed area as it exists today. That was a sticking point with the BLM. As per our assignment, we cannot disturb more area that's already disturbed, and it's about 30 feet in width. Otherwise, we would have to make an application to BLM and ask for their approval. That would take a significant amount of time. So our design standards do allow for some altering of the profile, provided that disturbed area is not maintained or not increased. The other option Mr. Cox has under Resolution 2016-116 is he can continue to maintain the surface, the disturbed surface, provided that the profile is not changed. And that is something that Mr. Cox could undertake at any moment. So we did make Mr. Cox aware of his options and actually stand available to further assist him. But I think we did provide clear guidance whereby he could, through his engineer, make certain changes, but stay within the disturbed area.
Thank you, Director Latowski. Chairman, if we can call Mr. Cox up and let him.
Yeah, he's signed up to speak. Mr. Arlo Cox, please.
Again.
Thank you.
This is Arlo Cox. I live there in Havasu Heights. Thank you for listening to me. It's a matter of understanding. This has been almost 3 years now. I did submit a plan a little over a year ago from an engineer. It was turned down. It was 25 feet. I was at the time told that it had to be a collector standard. I was also told to go to the BLM and get permission. I got that within 1 day because I've been working with the BLM. I come back, I've got a cease and desist order from a year ago. So I don't know that there's any way that I can move forward if 2016, as long as I have a cease and desist order. The understanding of it is real hard when I've already dealt with the BLM, had them approve the work I've been doing for the last 12 years. The question came up is that we asked if we could improve it, put asphalt on. I brought that to the staff. They come back and said, now you need an engineer. I've sent to you my engineered plans. They said that doesn't meet their standard. If you're only improving a road, why is it has to meet a standard? You're not going to maintain it. You're not going to accept it. You haven't accepted it now. I've been maintaining it. The 2016 says I can't disturb any new areas, so I can't try to even improve it at all because you can't change the profile of the road. You have to have an engineer. They won't accept my plan, only an engineer. They reduced the standard and said we could bring it in with 2 8-foot lanes, but then it'd have to have a new engineering plan, which cost another $20,000. We already brought you a plan at 25 feet. I say, and I think I can get the BLM to agree, I can fix the road, stay within the 30-foot disturbed area, which if you read it, says driving surface, not disturbed area. And because I've worked heavily with them. I've got another example of what you've done to a neighbor using the same thing. He came in, asked to put a culvert in. There'll be 2 pages to that. I think I've sent this also to you.
We get that on the screen? Go ahead, sir.
Okay, it's very recent. I have a couple pictures. He went out and actually just improved the road in front of his house. What you've stated in your process here is you're going to come over and tear it all out because the water ran over the road. The water's always run over the road. He put a culvert in, got a permit, graded it out, put a little bit of recycled asphalt on it, put a polymer. And what you guys, this was all done as of March. He's in violation at this time. And the county's
Continue.
I can continue. Attitude is they're going to take it out and charge him for it. I can show you a couple pictures here of what it is. I got pictures back from 2008. road looks pretty good to me. I think if you come do it, the water's draining across it. It does not meet a profile that is a county standard profile, but it's good enough to drive on. It's way better than the rest of the roads. Here's another picture. And for the last, here's a picture of it back in 2008. Now, this isn't mine. It isn't me. This is just another example of the staff looking at it. If they get a complaint, they want to go after somebody and change it and fix it, I think. I don't know why they come in so strong on this and say we're going to tear it out. The guy's done a great job. He surveyed it. I know the water flows on it. Yes, there's only a 24-inch culvert, but there was no culvert when he started. The water ran over the road. Most of the roads in that whole subdivision, the water runs over the road. He improved it. They're coming in and say, you can't do this. It's kind of their actions to stop people from improving the roads. As within 2016, the one I brought up to you, that said you can't disturb and them around. I can bring that back up if you like that.
Chairman Lingenfelter,
Attorney Esplin.
if I may ask Mr. Cox a question.
Sure.
Mr. Cox, at the last meeting that you were here on this issue, we were talking about the resolution 2016-116. What is the specific language that you have that's the obstacle to you that you're struggling with? Is it the, can you show?
It's the one I've highlighted here.
Thank you. So it's okay.
You can
So
read it.
that such maintenance of rights of ways and or roads is confined to the pre-existing disturbed area, preserves the, so basically, I'm just making sure that I understand correctly what's going on. The resolution allows county residents to improve roads without permits. But, and this is the part you're objecting to, is that they can only do that as long as it's confined to the pre-existing disturbed area, preserves the pre-existing alignment and elevation, and doesn't involve placement of asphaltic or Portland cement concrete.
That is correct. If you can't change the elevation, you can't grade it. You can't touch it.
And so what you want, I just want to make sure I understand everything. So what you want to do is you want to change the elevation, or am I not?
I do every time I grade, sir.
Okay, so you're
That is
saying
just
that.
the nature of grading a road.
So you're saying that the nature of improving it, you're always going to be, anybody will be violating this particular section.
That's exactly right. This gives you no ability to use the statute at all. Because if you can't change the elevation, if I'm a road builder, I pull it off the edges, bring it up and crown it if it needs that. Okay. Most of the time you start with a ditch. You pull it out of the ditch, you use the material, you fix the road. There's humps and holes every time you take a washboard. You take washboarding, there's high spots, low spots, you cut them.
Yeah, so could a possible solution to this be to reword this in a way that allows for maintaining the road, addressing the road things without, because I think the purpose of this section is that you're not making massively drastic changes and stuff.
Let's say I do make a drastic change. We call that put a culvert in, as this other gentleman has. Anybody, you make it a determination of a drastic change. You have in here, if I make a hazardous or anything else, you can stop me. But to make it where they can go, oh, that's a major change, you can't do that. Whether that's 2 inches, 6 inches, or 2 feet. He had to go down probably 4 feet there to put that pipe in. That's a pretty major change.
Okay, I'm just making sure I understand your position. And so wouldn't it just be a solution to address that paragraph and try to refine it?
If you took that paragraph out, it wasn't in 99-4119 in the prior, it was put in. As it was stated back then, I was working, going through, doing this, had no problem. This is where there comes the teeth to come in and say, I've changed the elevation. That doesn't make sense. If I can improve a road, I take out 6 inches to a foot. Is that major? Is 3 foot major?
What happens if water changes the elevation?
Well, if water naturally does it?
Yeah, I mean, the way it's written, because I think you're what I'm hearing you say is the way it's written kind of sets up an unachievable standard, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so, yeah, exactly. And I think if you just try to to specify a little bit more and say, okay, here are the standards, because I don't know if completely taking out the whole paragraph would be wise, simply because, I think the purpose was just not to make these absolutely massive swings of changes. But certainly what you're saying is that, and I think what Mr. Cox is saying, that this is an unachievable standard. Okay, then make a standard that is achievable.
Manager Elders.
Mr. Chairman, there is conventional understanding of terminology for roadway maintenance, and the current language in the resolution reflects what the county does day in and day out on miles and miles and miles of roadways in the county. We maintain them in their current conditions. We maintain them within an existing surface. We change the elevations by an inch or two to remove the ripple effect, as noted by Mr. Cox. If you have a wash that crosses the roadway and erodes up to 1/2 foot or better, we grade the roadway and bring that material back in. That's really all a part of standard maintenance roadways. So to Attorney Esplin's comment, removing the paragraph is really unnecessary. We're not talking about an inch or two here. What we're talking about is changing the elevation of the surface of the roadway in a substantial manner, which would include leveling the grades to meet a certain design standards, or placing a drainage pipe or culvert to convey runoff through the roadway. Those are changes that are substantial in nature, and they're designed to be done under a permit. So the changes are made in a way that is designed and anticipated. I don't really think there is a we're debating in circles. Mr. Cox has an option to maintain a roadway, maintain it by grading it as he has for years, and he's good with that if that's what he chooses to do. If he needs to place pipes or change the grades substantially, then it needs to be designed and improved to acceptable standards. So it offers or meets the driver's expectations. We don't know where this road will go in a year or 2 or 5. This could get petitioned for the county to accept for maintenance at some point, whether it's next year or beyond. So it's adopting and working within standards that we've had over the years. We've held developers, we've held ourselves to those standards, and it's no different for Mr. Cox. I'm not seeing the challenge here. He has an option to continue to work within disturbed condition, or get a permit, improve it to engineered standards, and proceed in that direction.
Can I ask a question?
Supervisor Angus.
Sir, how many vehicles go over this road?
Right now, we have 6 full-time people, 5 that are part-time. I've sent a letter, I've got it right here if you want, with everybody approving the grading that we've been doing, the approving on the road. The big thing I have a little exception with Sam, Mr. Elders, is that in this agreement, you say improve. If it was only saying this isn't a maintenance agreement, it says that we can improve the road. If it comes as a 2-track, which is what it was when I started, I have been over 12 years improving it up to 12, probably about 20 feet. There's only a few people. We're not trying to bring it up to a county standard. We're not asking you to maintain it. We're doing all of this at our cost. And trying to we've got to stay within the easement. I have to make the BLM happy. The BLM, I've also got another easement further that I can work on that's not with the county. They allow us to stay in the easement and do this. So there's a very few of us that are sitting out here, and some of it is substantial changes in the road to where it quits washing out. When I started, there was 5-foot ruts through it. So the restraint is within the easement. We can't do too much grade change or we go outside the easement or the disturbed area.
Yeah, I'm not an engineer, total layman, and I understand what Mr. Elters was saying, and I understand. So there should be a meeting in the middle. There has to be something to help this gentleman out for his very localized area, and still sort of have these expectations for maybe future. But I say, let's just help this man. He's been after this for so many years. He's put in a lot of money, and we seem to be the sticking point here.
Yeah, when we get down to, there's your standards on your roads. It wasn't offered to me until about 3 years in that we could go to a lower standard. We started as a collector standard, actually started as arterial. I said, we don't want that size road. We want a smaller road. That's why we presented a 25-foot wide road. It doesn't meet any of these, so therefore it isn't available to us. We have to meet the quote standard.
I have a question for Manager Elters, and maybe it's a silly question. This roadway is not adopted into our roadway maintenance system. And a lot of rural roads that we have in Mojave County, I don't think they're designed at all. They just lay light on the land. Washes go through them all the time. I mean, all kinds of, the elements hit them, sun, wind, all that stuff. And this goes through BLM property, is that correct? So my question is, we have right-of-way, but it's my understanding, don't we have an agreement with BLM for right-of-way just for our own vehicles? If we have to get our own vehicles in there, that we have to give right-of-way? Why is the county maintaining or doing anything for BLM? What's BLM putting into this? Is BLM going out and grading the roads or maintaining their own property? They manage it, don't they? So what are they giving us?
Mr. Chairman, BLM does not maintain any roads that I know of, but they do manage federal land, and we get easements and or rights-of-ways from them to maintain them. We, as you noted, we have hundreds, actually a couple thousand miles of unimproved roadways. We've just maintained them over the years. Some of them are so rough, we label them as tertiary because they are minimally maintained. So they're posted as such, and years back in the 90s, there were so many lawsuits against counties that the statutes were developed so the counties can go and post these roads with these signs to notify the drivers. So it's back to that driver's expectations is to notify them that this is lightly maintained road. It's not in great conditions. It's driver expectations that we often fall back on when we're talking about improved versus unimproved roadway. When a roadway is improved, when it has the appearance of an improved surface, it's expected to have lane width adequate enough for a vehicle and drainage. So, and that's what our standards are based on. If and when, and I can just point you to examples from way back in the 90s when we improved Stockton Hill Road. I was still with the county. I was a working engineer. We went to BLM and we had to get additional right-of-way in order to widen it and build it to standards. And they required us to follow the requirements at the time. We did and got what was needed and proceeded accordingly. That's what I understand we're doing here. It's public land, it's federal land, and we're
Sure.
Requiring what would be required of us, Chairman.
I've got a question from Attorney Esplin. Could we allow the gentleman to go out and and grade the road and just ask them to pay for a $200 sign that says that the road's not up to condition or something? I'm just,
Love to.
I don't know. I'd have to look at that. I don't know if they could or could not. But I do have a suggestion here to try to address this issue. I mean, we're really confined to what's on the board's agenda. And if you look at the board's agenda, it's, which one, what item are we on?
82.
82. So we're discussing the resolution here, Resolution 2016-116, and the board can make any edits, updates, or repeal the resolution as need be. And really, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the resolution. And I see the problem that Mr. Cox has. It's with that language.
It is with the language, and I'll fight my own. I've been doing it for 3 years. I'm looking at the resolution. If you change that one paragraph, that allows even the other person that's done this the right to do what he's done. I'm looking at it for everybody, because if they can fix it.
sure.
So
Have him finish.
No problem, sorry.
So I can see, and I can see he's making a compelling case as to why he should be able to fix it. He's made that case to the board here twice now. So what I would suggest, this is just some language you could add at the end of that paragraph, because I don't feel comfortable just saying take that out, but I think there's a happy median here, like Supervisor Angus pointed out. What I would say is keep that same language, and then something like this. At the end, say, except that upon a written request submitted to the Public Works Department and presented to the Board of Supervisors, the board may approve a variance of some or all of these restrictions. So basically, there's someone to say, hey, that makes sense. Why don't we do a variance of some sort? It could be this board to grant the variance, or it could be the Board of or the Public Works Department grant the variance. Somebody that says, yep, that makes sense. Let's go ahead and do this on a one-off, case-by-case basis. So that'd be, I don't know if you like that idea, but that would be the language you would add to that. So you keep that in there. And then when Mr. Cox comes in and says, hey, this is what I want to do, you say, oh, that makes sense. Go ahead and grant the variance. If somebody else comes in and says, has this wild, crazy idea, and they say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to keep it as it is. So.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Gould.
does that work for you, Mr. Cox?
Well, I'll go back. And I mean, part of this when I first talked to him, I mean, I tried to fix the road back in 2010. I got turned in. Everybody said it was the county's road, then it was the BLM's road. You just can't get an answer. Even when I brought this in, your employee hurt his back, and I fully understand it. I can't remember his name, but that took 6 months for it. When we're doing the maintenance and people are out, I see it all over. They're dragging the roads and doing different things that they're just trying to fix their road. To come in and always have to come in and get permission to do good drives me crazy. I mean, it's just constant regulations. Well, no, we can't let you do that. You have to have permission. You have to have a plan. That'll take you 6 months to get through. You had this in 99. Did you have a lot of problems in 99? You can look it up. It's 99-419. That language was not in. Did you have an immense amount of problem with it between 99 and 2016?
I don't know the answer to that. We probably didn't.
Let's put it back another time, take a look.
Yeah,
because I think if you just take it out, you get back to the meaning it was in 99. And I don't think you had a problem. That would allow people to do it. If somebody complains, they can come shut me down. I love the idea of the sign. That gets the county out of the problem, that you put one thing in there saying you're required to put a sign with somebody to notify that this road is being maintained by Arlo Cox or by the homeowners association or a group of neighbors, so that if there's a problem, they know who to address. And it takes the burden and the legal ramifications off of the county. Then I'm stepping up, I come in and say, I want to do this. This regulation says I have to put a sign up to say I'm doing it. If there's a problem, you'll get a call and you'll know who's doing the problem. Then you can address it.
I think you have common sense to me.
Yeah, you've got various options here. You could remove the section as Mr. Cox suggests, or you could go with the suggestion to put up a sign, or the other suggestion here, or do nothing, just whatever the board wants to do.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Gould.
I don't think we were having a lot of trouble, because we went back to look at when they passed the 016 ordinance, and it went through on the consent agenda with no debate. Which means, to me, that means there was just something that got put on there, and there was no big concern, no public outcry or anything.
Yeah, I'm not advocating one way or the other, just trying to give you solutions, so.
What would happen if we went back to, was it the 90?
99, 419.
99? The differences between the 99 and
The backside of that, the backside of 99 had a bunch of definition on who could do the grading based on 5-acre lot size and such. The first 2 pages were almost identical, and then they had some more plate back there on who the person, developers can't use it. Person owning more than 5 lots, I think. I'd have to reread it.
Yeah, that's the subdivision report issue.
So that was the only real difference in the backside. Most of it, the first 2 pages are almost identical except for this.
I think if we took up Attorney Esplund's suggestion, and then if there's going to be some sort of an exception, you know, maybe we request a sign, something that takes the county out of it. I don't understand even still why, you know, if the BLM doesn't like it, then have the BLM come and do something and pay their money. Why are we getting involved?
I don't think the BLM is concerned.
No, I don't think they are either. If it's a liability thing, just have them put up a sign. We put up signs everywhere.
I don't want to have every property owner put up a sign, though.
Yeah.
So you'd have to delineate the conditions that you wanted to sign.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it makes it as much of a hassle as it was before.
Sure. And you get into the whole discussion about what is the definition of substantial. Right. And I still don't.
If you remove the statement about elevation change, then you don't have to worry about defining what substantial is.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Elders.
it sounds, what Attorney Esplund offered sounds like a workable solution. It allows for variances, and it allows for special consideration, and the board to consider those cases, if that works for you. If you're considering going back to 99, whatever that, I don't know what that stands for. I would recommend we don't go there without reviewing it first, so please do not. But if you would like to take the offer from Attorney Esplund to allow the board to consider variations, we can work with that.
How about if we just take out that paragraph right from the beginning? I mean, that's not completely 1999, or is it? To take that out. 1999 had other things.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, I don't really know what 99 had in it, so
Right now, what we have in
don't-
front of us, we
but-
can take that out.
But removing, I think leaving the resolution in place and allowing for variances is really a good option
And
as
it's,
well.
people have to come in front of us in the long process. It could take months and months and months. You know, and for what? I mean, honestly, I don't understand, like, for what purpose? I know we've been talking, but I still don't get it.
So just to be clear, to maintain the roads, according to 2016, and I'm sorry, I've got both up here that I've been playing with, the old version and the new version. Under 2016, anybody can maintain a road that we don't maintain, except that they have to follow those restrictions in that paragraph. Correct, Mr. Cox?
No, it goes through on all of what they can do. That paragraph all of a sudden gets, in my opinion, it wasn't in the 99, it is in this one, and is one where basically I've been told by staff that nobody can grade any road in Mojave County without a permit.
I don't think that's correct.
Well, that is what I've been told, because 2016 says you can't do it.
No, if you look at, no, let me read it here.
That is why I'm here discussing the statute, not anything else.
Pull it up.
It says that you cannot do anything except the disturbed area, and you cannot change the elevation. In exact theory, when you cannot change the elevation, you cannot grade.
No, but I think you're misinterpreting it. I do. I mean.
Well, I think your staff is
And that
misinterpreting.
he's getting it from staff. That's the
Okay,
staff's
I'm not
interpretation.
saying-
So then maybe that's a problem then. That's a problem. But the
I'd strike the
resolution-
word and elevation.
Yeah. So
So you can, it preserves the pre-existing alignment and does not involve placement of asphalt and Portland. If you strike and elevation out of there, then you're.
Yeah, that would help.
But-
But the same thing, if you're going to take the tools away from somebody to fix it, washouts would be better served if you're going to do it with concrete or with recycled asphalt or something. I'm not saying everybody do it. One man's done it. Why are you stopping him? You're trying to improve the road. Nobody's out here trying to destroy it. They're driving down it. I mean, you're looking at this to try to prevent people from fixing things. It's a road you haven't touched in 30 years.
I know.
You've
I
had
know.
easement.
I think. Look. I don't think I am not disagreeing at all with your argument. You make a persuasive argument. You really do. What I'm saying is, if you look at the resolution, the first now therefore, it specifically says the county will not require landowners or residents to obtain a right-of-way use permit as a requisite to maintaining at their cost such right-of-ways. That's what the purpose of this statute is, of this resolution is, to allow landowners the opportunity to do it. The problem that Mr. Cox is having is with the interpretation of the next paragraph. Staff is interpreting it in a way that they're requiring him to have a permit. That's the rub.
Engineered set of plans to do any work, which I've already paid 12 grand for.
Because what they're saying is,
I can have people just go through the chairs. We're going to have two people talking at once.
Yes.
Sorry.
Attorney Esplin.
So the staff is saying, hey, you are doing something here that is altering the pre-existing disturbed area or the pre-existing alignment or the elevation, whatever the case may be. And so therefore you need a permit. That's what they're doing. Correct.
I agree. That's what the staff is doing. And I say the paper's written improperly where they don't understand it. If you take out that section, we don't have that discussion anymore because it says all over this page that your intent was for people to improve and maintain. That's all I'm asking for, and not have the staff come in and say, no, you have to go through engineering. Here's all your steps. Here's your permit. You can't do any grading without it. That's what I've been told. I didn't spend 3 years coming in here, spend the kind of money to be really fighting with you. I'm trying to fix the road.
Sure. Thank you, sir. What's the pleasure of the board? I don't know how we do it, and I'm going to lean on you to do it, but I want to allow this gentleman to go out and continue to grade this road. And then it sounds like there's a whole other can of worms that we need to go through, which, I don't think we want to be here till 4:30 again today, do we? So,
Mr. Chairman,
Manager Elthers.
one short comment. It may be helpful to look at the resolution, leave it as is, and just add the term not construct. I don't really, again, as an engineer, we look at things maintaining in current condition or constructing. I think if we don't, if we just say not construct, it may do away with all this.
I think this
Then he
gentleman has
can
been
do
doing
some-
right by this road for decades, it sounds like, or how long have we been doing it? And let's solve this problem first and let him to continue to grade the road. And then if there's other things that we need to look at, let's look at those.
Mr. Chairman.
Lingenfelter?
Supervisor Angus.
Can we give this gentleman his variance today and then come back and fix everything else?
No, we'd have to, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get a solution, but we are restricted to what's in the resolution, so.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we strike behind the word alignment, strike the word and elevation, and then the rest of that paragraph.
Chairman Lingenfelter, if I could ask for clarification.
Go ahead.
Supervisor Gould, would then you put a period after alignment?
Correct.
Okay.
You've heard that motion.
Second.
Heard that motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 83, this is my item. It's a partnership with the Kingman Unified School District and the STEM program that they have. I'm looking to provide the last District 1 ARPA funds, and I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item number 84, this is my item. I place this on the State of Arizona Commerce Authority, the State Broadband Office. They're going around with 2 survey instruments for their broadband program at the state. I'm asking staff to contact each one of the county supervisors, get their input, and then get our surveys into those state offices. I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion in second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appears to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item number 85. This is to direct staff to create and bring back before the Board of Supervisors on August 21st, 2023, a Mojave County ordinance adopting, oh, I'm sorry, we did do that already, didn't we? Gosh. This has been the crazy meeting, yeah, excuse me, so 86 now. This is on revisions to the bylaws of the Mojave County Public Lands and Recreation Commission. Direct county staff to assist with resuming regular commission meetings. The revisions include expanding the functions and duties of the commission to provide advice on the planning, installation, use, promotion, and regulation of renewable energy projects on public and private lands within Mojave County, changing the membership of the commission to include members with subject matter knowledge or expertise, extending the commission to include, extending the duration of the term of membership to 4 years, and changing the schedule of commission meetings to a monthly basis. I read that into the record for the supervisors that are not here and they don't have the agenda in front of them. Supervisor Angus?
Thank you. This came up when we got wind of all the stuff that the federal government is planning for our public lands, and then the monument, and it seemed everything was coming in us fast and furious without us knowing about it, without any public input, without anything. So I remembered that, I believe it was 2018, we put together a public lands commission, and it had a narrow focus on when the BLM was thinking about closing trails to motorized vehicles, and the ATV community had a thing or two to say about that. And a couple of people came to me, and so at the time we figured, well, let's put together a commission that we could call these agencies in front of us. We can keep up with what's going on. If there needed to be public input, we can put a call to action out, everything that would make us proactive. And it was successful because they abandoned their plan. So I spoke to Chairman Lingenfelter and I said, well, why don't we resurrect that commission and expand it to all these new projects, and hopefully we could have similar outcomes. This is much more involved and complicated than just shutting the trails. But if we could have a organization in place that could keep track of all of this, that will let us know. I mean, it was shameful that we did not know about that public comment period that ended up in Flagstaff that should have been here. We actually heard about it from the assistant to a U.S. senator asking, why isn't it in Mojave County? That's shameful. So if we could sort of be proactive, get in front of some of these things, call these agencies to testify in front of us. There's a lot of different, I use this term bedfellows, but it's true, strange bedfellows in this, because it's not just ATV now. It's not just recreation. It's the ranchers. It's the activists, the environmentalists. So, that's where I stand. And so I believe that this item was to change the bylaws so we could do all of that, those things within the bylaws. And I'm also going to add that I think that we should have somebody, even if we have to hire somebody, an expert that knows the politics, that knows the agencies, that knows where to look, and could, you know, there used to be a time we looked at the Federal Register every day for things that were coming up. Somebody that could be in charge. I think it's a bigger task than just being able to give it over to a staff member like we did when we did the ATV trail issue. So I think this could be a really good thing, and I think we need to do it quickly because it seems that the federal government is acting fast and furious to take away lands from us, to do what they want. In my estimation, before 2024, these things have been shameless, not doing all the things they make us, local governments or even private companies do on the federal lands. They're just saying, well, we don't have to do it. And you know, we have to do what the other side of the aisle has been doing for years, which is approach it legally if we have to, and never give up. Just nag, nag, nag. That's sort of my tagline. Just keep on it, never give up. And at some point, I think we will be successful. I'm not saying we will be successful all the time, but I think there'll be certain times that we can affect the outcome of some of these things. So there is somebody signed up to speak, and that is Robert Smith.
I was going to say good morning, but good afternoon to the chairman, to the members. My name's Robert Smith. I live at 906 Yucca Street in Bullhead. And Hildy pretty much, I should say Supervisor Angus, I'm sorry, already said pretty much everything I had written down. When we did form the Public Lands and Recreation Committee back in 2017, I was the chairman of the commission. It took a lot of dedication and hard work by the commission members, the county staff, and the full support of the Mojave County Board of Supervisors. The BLM plan was rejected and sent back to Washington, D.C. to be completely redone. As of right now, we have gotten no revision. I have been warned that it's still in the works. Things work really slow back there. I feel our success was well worth it. Our plan then that this county put together was used as a model in other BLM and U.S. Forest Service plans where the outcome was either stopped or made more compatible. We did a really good job at starting a really good thing. As far as for myself, I'm looking forward to being a part of a team that will be necessary to gather all the material and information to fight this thing, to make it a workable agreement in the end for the benefit of all. And with my expertise, I think I can be a good part of this because I'm very experienced in the off-road communities. I belong to at least half a dozen organizations and clubs. And as far as on the electrical side, I think my expertise will really help. I worked for a power company for over 30 years. I worked in the line department. I was the general foreman when I retired, and we were responsible for several thousand miles of lines, all the way from the transmission lines to the substations, clear to the meter on the house. So I thank you for your time, and I really support this idea. I'm looking forward to getting down and getting dirty and getting it done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Lingenfelter?
Supervisor Angus.
Yeah, Robert Smith was one of the first that came to me with this when we did the trails, and he was an excellent chairman of that commission at the time, and I will be asking to put him on as the representative for the recreational part of our committee. And I've read the bylaws, and I didn't find anything that I think needed to be changed.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you. Reading the bylaws, is this going to be a limited scope or it's just solar on public and private?
That's a good question. I think, really, I think that it needs to be not only the utility scale renewable energy projects, as we've seen the Biden administration, they're pushing over 25,000 megawatts of these utility energy scale projects on federal lands, which just happen to be here in the West. But also, we've seen administrative rules, like they're pushing something called conservation easements, which this board has come out against, which would allow environmental groups to lease land and basically kick everybody else off. That's already occurring in Idaho on federal lands and other places. So I would like to have this commission have a voice there and also, ask BLM to come and work with us on those types of things, because that's going to affect a whole lot of areas in the West. So especially here in Mojave County.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you. I guess my concern, it's not really written out the way I would like to see it. I don't agree that we need something that's wide open. I know what you're saying, but I think that's the board's responsibility to handle those things. I don't want a committee that just goes wild with whatever they decide they want to go after with BLM. They shouldn't have the ability to be calling BLM in to answer to them. They're not elected people. They're just advisors to us. If we as a board see something and we need the input of these organizations, that's great. And they've always stepped forward to do it. But I think you're creating another bureaucracy that we don't need. And if you do go ahead with something like this, I see where you're limiting the number of people to one from each supervisory district, and then you're going to have at least, I think, from reading it correctly, another 5 people representing specialty organizations. I don't know that we should have the voting membership should only be the ones from each supervisor district, with the tiebreaker being the supervisor that's put on. And then I guess I would leave it up to Mr. Esplin. If we open it up, are we going to open up to all interests in BLM land, whether it be people who believe in climate change and all that, or are we going to be able to restrict it to just the people we want? That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Attorney Esplin.
Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisor Johnson, the sky's the limit, so to speak, in terms of what you want to do with your commission. It's your commission. You'll decide how you want to be formed and who will be on there. And so you'll make that call. The board of supervisors will decide how this commission will be set up. I drafted the amendments to these bylaws based on the input that I received and what I believe that the supervisors wanted. You're welcome to change it as you see fit to address the issues that you want to address.
Thank you. Supervisor Angus.
Yeah, I understand what Supervisor Johnson is saying, and if this whole thing started when we caught wind about the solar leases on public lands and the monument. So if you wanted to limit that scope, if that would make everybody a little bit more comfortable. And as far as, everyone sort of going crazy with what they want to do, we will have an elected official on that board chairing it to make sure that that doesn't happen, I believe. So I'd be okay with that, if that's okay with the board, to limit it to, how would we word this, to...
Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisor Angus, if I could address that.
Sure.
I mean, right now, the way that it's proposed, it's limited to two different things. One is the one that it was already for. The second one would be for the planning, installation, use, promotion, and regulation of renewable energy projects on public and private lands within Mojave County. So that's the current restrictions that is being proposed. If you want to broaden that and make it even more restrictive, then that would be for you to decide.
I definitely see, I mean, I forget what month it was, but didn't Mojave County, we said we were going to kick a little funding to something that was happening at NACO, you know, wasn't it Coconino County and maybe some others that wanted to come together and have some sort of a public lands type of a deal. You know, we're going to get involved with them. So, you know, I think right now, with a lot of things that we're seeing right now, I see this as commission is maybe a research arm of the board. I mean, a lot of times right now we're not seeing, or we see these things come up and we're not seeing a lot of research going into them, other than maybe it's just a land use thing, or maybe it's just this, you know, and really providing the board with some quality research and data on these things that they would be looking at. And then maybe we could use that information for Mojave County's input into this larger organization as well.
Chairman Lingenfelter, that larger organization through NACO, we asked about it when I was down there in NACO, and it really is just a research organization, which I didn't really realize when we voted to give them money. But when the joint session was here from the House and the Senate, they were talking about possibly joining other states. We used to be involved in an organization called the American Lands Council. I know Jeannie Kench was at a meeting and they have resurrected because of all of this. It was dormant for a while because during the Trump administration, it wasn't crazy like it is now. So they've resurrected, and we can sort of hook up with them. I see this commission as getting the most important things in front of us, saying, you know, and you're right, it would be sort of a research thing saying this is when this is supposed to happen, and if we need to schedule public comments, again, so we're not caught like we were during this monument thing, when we were really blindsided by that whole process. I would assume that this particular commission would have seen that coming and could have advised us, not saying that we could have stopped it. I don't think anything could have stopped it, but at least we would have known in advance. And I don't know about the rest of the board, but people have been contacting me. They're outraged. People want to be involved from all areas. And each of these areas, like the Ranchers Association, the Cattlemen Association, they have their organizations that they're hooked into. So all of that coming together to protect Mojave County. I think it's worth a try. We don't know. But again, if we have half the success we had for the trails, I think it's worth the shot.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest pros to this, because we are involved in that NACO research arm, but who gets to decide what research is done? And I don't trust NACO. I mean, is it going to be a bunch of climate change and global boiling or whatever they call it now? Or is it research that we're going to be able to say what research gets done, right? Which affects ranchers and things like that. I don't trust the NACO thing because I've seen the direction that they've gone. And that's why I think it's important for organizations like Mojave County to become more involved in this type of stuff so that we can kind of counteract that. Keep it more in the middle.
So the bylaws already narrow the scope of it, correct? I mean, there's nothing you want even narrower. Supervisor Johnson, is there anything you want even narrower?
No, that'll be fine. I appreciate it. The way that we were talking, I thought we were getting kind of a carte blanche to them, so that's fine with me.
Okay, great, thank you.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the revisions to the bylaws of the Mojave County Public Lands and Recreation Commission and direct county staff to assist with resuming regular commission meetings.
You've heard that motion. You've heard that motion and second. Any additional discussion?
Chairman, if I could have just quick discussion, just something I would suggest. So with these adoptions, the previous commission was for one-year terms, so they've all expired. They're all done. So just what I would recommend, if the board approves this, to at the next board meeting, submit names and get moving and stuff, and so just be aware of that.
Do I have to put that in the motion?
No, you don't.
Okay.
You don't. Just a suggestion that if it's approved at the next board meeting or upcoming board meeting, start submitting names and start that process going.
Perfect.
Very good, thank you. You've heard that motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item number 89. No. Do we need any action on item number 89? I mean, we
Yes,
talked about it in
Chairman.
executive session, but we needed a direction.
Yeah, so what I would suggest is it comes down to if the board wishes to approve the staff recommendations that were made at the executive session on August 7th. If the board does not approve of that, if the board does not want to go with the recommendation, then either you take no action or vote to say do not follow the recommendations. If the board if the board decides not to follow the recommendations that we gave to the board during the executive session, then I will go as directed previously from the May 1st meeting. There was a May 1st meeting and the board gave me direction at that time.
Thank you, Attorney Esplin, for the clarification. What's the pleasure of the board? Supervisor Angus?
Yes, I move that we accept the advice of counsel to move forward.
You heard that motion. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chair,
Supervisor Johnson?
can you repeat the motion? For some reason, it cut out on me.
Oh, yes, because I wasn't on my microphone. I made the motion to accept the advice of counsel moving forward on the Mojave County's Fair Association's operation and use of the Mojave County Fairgrounds, to accept the proposal.
Well, I wish I hadn't heard that. Thank you.
You've heard that motion. Do I have a second? Item appears to die for lack of a second. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Gould?
I move that the board ignore the advice of the attorney.
You've heard that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item 90, Manager Elters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. Mojave County Animal Shelter received an unsolicited donation from a trustee on behalf of Lieutenant Colonel Joanne E. Barton. The amount was $345,000. The timing was terrific and awesome, and the amount is very generous. We are the staff is very grateful. Staff did reach out to the trustee. I was under the impression that the trustee might be in the audience. I did not get confirmation. They were unable to confirm. Doesn't look like they're here, but staff did reach out to them a couple of times to thank them, to express gratitude, and to ensure that the funding is going to be spent consistent to their wishes, which is medical equipment and care of new facility, dog equipment for extending space, and then cat community expansion in the new facility. We have, on behalf of the board, expressed gratitude for this generous offer. And we asked them if it's okay to say it, and they said sure. So the Lieutenant Colonel Barton's generosity is much appreciated, and that's what she wanted the public to know. So with that said, we sincerely ask you to consider it and accept it.
Well, thank you. On behalf of the Mojave County Board of Supervisors, absolutely thank you for this very generous gift for the shelter and the animals. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
County Manager, do you know if the spending of this money is going to create an additional maintenance cost at the facility?
Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Gould, medical equipment and care at the new facility, as well as a dog equipment for expanding space and activity, and then cat community expansion. Honestly, I can't get in the weeds on this other than whatever equipment we do provide at the shelter with this money may require some maintenance down the road. I don't really expect it to be significant. It's in the way of kennels and so on. But I don't know if I'm answering your question. Staff is here, Nicole and Aaron maybe can provide you additional info. But, you know, some maintenance may be necessary, but I don't see it as being substantial.
I've just asked the question because you're expanding the cat community and the space of the dog, space and activity. So if you're going to make the facility larger, then there may be an additional maintenance cost.
Mr. Chairman,
which will be borne by the taxpayers.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gould, I think the language here is to reflect that we're going from the current facility to the newer facility, and this funding will go to equip and ready the new facility. But would you like some additional info I can have?
I'm just, if we're going to expand the size of the facility because of the donation is what my question actually is.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gould, as you know, the size of the new facility is set by the contract that the board awarded. This will be literally just to stand it up and ramp up those services and have it ready.
Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Angus.
Chairman Lingenfelter, I make a motion to approve this very generous donation.
Thank you. You've heard that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? You guys appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item number 91, Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume after the 2 weeks you've had on this agenda that everybody's read the backup on this item, so I'd make a motion to approve.
Second, any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. We are adjourned.
Gene Bishop.